Marvel. This Magneto is a good guy. Chapter 61. The man frozen in the North Pole, no need to think about it, must be Captain America. Eric held the wine glass and rubbed his fingers unconsciously on the pattern of the wine glass, thinking about what Captain America should do. It's definitely not the right time to dig it out. Why? Where should we dig out Captain America at this time? His family is definitely not good. He has too many secrets. He also keeps hundreds of Hydra scientists in his basement. If Captain America finds out, he will probably have to commit murder and silence. Give it to S.H.I.E.L.D. No, the current S.H.I.E.L.D. is under the leadership of Alexander, and Hydra has a higher say than S.H.I.E.L.D. If it is left to them, it will be a sheep in a tiger's mouth, and it will definitely be sliced and studied in minutes. It is even more impossible to let him go out to play by himself. He is the first superhero in the United States. Everyone in the United States does not know him. Moreover, his mind is still stuck in the World War II period. If he is let out, there will definitely be trouble. Then, leave it to Carter. Wait, Carter. Eric shuddered suddenly, and he suddenly realized a very serious problem. In this parallel universe, have the Avengers crossed the timeline? If we traveled through time, there would probably be two Captain Americas here. One was still working as a popsicle in the North Pole, and the other had already married Carter and had children to accompany him throughout his life. But where is he? He is a special being who traveled from a parallel universe, and even the Life Tribunal has acquiesced in his existence, indicating that he will definitely have a beneficial impact on this universe. So, with his presence, does Thanos still snap his fingers? When Thanos snapped his fingers, did he turn to dust or did he survive? Has he crossed the timeline? Carter's husband, this is the key figure. If Carter's husband is Captain America, then he himself is likely to be killed by Thanos' snap of his fingers in the future, and his enhancement and upgrade plan must be improved. If Carter's husband isn't Captain America, who is he? Did this universe stop Thanos because of his participation? It can't be explained, the way is unclear, and it can't be figured out. Eric broke out in a cold sweat and wished he could fly to England immediately to see who Carter's mysterious husband was. Eric, my brother, what's wrong with you? Are you cold? Are you feeling unwell? T'Chaka asked with great concern when he saw Eric sweating profusely. He must have drunk too much. Namor's eyes were a little blurry. He patted Eric on the shoulder and laughed loudly. Your drinking capacity is really bad. In Atlantis, men who can't drink will be looked down upon. Another drink for the coward, Eric. T'Chaka, I have something urgent and I can't accompany you anymore. I'm sorry, how about we get together next time? Eric thought for a long time, but was still uneasy, and immediately decided to go to England immediately. Oh, so urgent. Do you need help? Seeing that Eric didn't want to be joking, T'Chaka hurriedly said that as long as he needs it, Wakanda will go through fire and water without hesitation. Are you serious? Are you going to fight? How about taking me with you? Namor also put down his wine glass, his eyes clear in an instant, and he looked eager to try. Eric shook his head and rejected the two people's kindness. I just want to confirm a very important thing. It's safe and there will be no danger. I'll just go by myself. After hearing what he said, T'Chaka gave him a string of Kimoi beads and asked him to contact Wakanda immediately if necessary. Seeing that Eric was really leaving, Namor also stood up and said goodbye to T'Chaka. Seeing that his eyes were filled with fierceness, he probably wanted to seek revenge from Hydra. Namor, the Hydra matter is not urgent. I think it would be better for you to go back to Atlantis first. Eric patted him on the shoulder and dissuaded him. Why? What could happen to Atlantis? Namor was puzzled. Hydra can grasp your location so accurately, don't you think it's not a big problem? Eric shook his head helplessly. How come this elm-headed man has no brains at all except for losing his temper? Atlantis follows him, I'm afraid it will be lively in the future. You mean? Namor's eyes widened suddenly, his face full of disbelief, and then he immediately turned to anger, kicked his feet hard, and rose into the sky. I'm leaving first. T'Chaka looked at his floor speechlessly. The good solid wood floor was just stepped on and a big hole came out, and he had to pay again. I wonder if Wakanda is rebuilding after the disaster. Does everything cost money? Before leaving, Eric went to see the Howard couple who were still lying dead. The old couple were still awake, but judging from their appearance, they were gradually getting rid of their old age, their skin was regaining its luster, and their hair was white. Blackened again. Judging from the monitoring data in Wakanda, it is unlikely that when they wake up, they will be as young as Eric, but their appearance will at least return to the middle age of about 40 years old, and their physical fitness will be far superior to that of ordinary people. In London, England, Eric found Carter's home easily. A typical British-style building, a small two-story building with a small lawn next to it, with more than 10 kinds of flowers carefully planted inside, which looks very warm. Eric had a slight sense and found 2 hidden agents around him. It seemed that S.H.I.E.L.D. was still very protective of his old leader. There was no one in the house, Carter must have gone out. This is convenient for Eric. He quickly distorted the light and disappeared, his feet 5 centimeters above the ground, and entered Carter's house like a ghost. The room was warm and tidy, with many decorations continuing the style of the 1930s, and many photos hanging on the wall. Eric floated over gently, carefully checking the photos one by one. There were photos of Carter herself, her daughter, her son, and her with her 2 children, but not her husband. It seemed that there would be no discovery of these things on the surface. Eric shook his head and closed his eyes to carefully sense the structure of the house. This sense did find that there was a secret passage leading to the underground on the wall of the study. But Eric could not sense where the secret passage led to, as if the two were in different spaces. This had never happened before. Eric could not help but be cautious, and went to the study carefully. According to what he sensed, he found a mechanism on a bookcase and gently opened the entrance to the secret passage. It was hard to imagine that this secret passage was spotless, and even the steps were wiped clean. Eric was careful not to touch anything, and flew down the secret passage. The secret passage was not long, only more than 10 meters, but Eric felt like he had traveled through a parallel universe, and the whole world became different. This feeling was not a change in the magnetic field, nor a change in the air or environment, but a more profound change, a change he had only experienced when he traveled through a parallel universe. Strange, am I wrong? Could this be a pocket dimension created by a wizard? Eric looked around in confusion, and suddenly a gust of wind came from behind his head. Eric suddenly reached out his hand, and a round object stopped in midair. S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. Who are you? A voice sounded in the corner, deep and slightly old. Captain. Eric called out tentatively, but in fact he was basically sure that it was him. Who are you? I won't ask a third time. He was still hiding in the corner, not coming out, and his voice was still tough. Eric Lanshier, president of Alice Industries. Eric didn't want to fight at all at this time, he just wanted to find out whether he would live or die in the future. Captain, I have no ill intentions, please come out, I have something to talk to you about. No ill intentions. Normal people won't break into private houses. You know, according to the castle law, I can beat you into a sieve at any time. I'm afraid there is no gun in the world that can beat me into a sieve. Captain, or, do you want me to call you Steve Rogers? Seeing that he didn't come out for a long time, Eric walked over slowly. Who? I don't know what you are talking about. Hearing the footsteps, the man over there no longer hid and walked out slowly. His face was full of wrinkles and his hair was slightly gray, but the high bulging muscles on his body and the inadvertent expression in his eyes told Eric that this was him. Captain America, Steve Rogers. If you don't leave quickly, then I can only ask you to leave with my fist. Steve stared at Eric closely, his fist clenched. I have no ill intentions and don't want to fight, I just want to talk to you. Before Eric finished his sentence, Steve pounced like a cheetah and punched Eric in the face. When the fist was less than 10 centimeters away from his face, one hand gently caught the fist. No matter how hard Steve tried, he couldn't move forward. But Steve would not give up easily. He grabbed Eric's wrist with his other hand, used it to gain strength, and stepped hard on Eric's chest with both feet. Eric twisted his waist to avoid the kick, and at the same time, he used his arms to throw him out. Steve quickly stood up, took an offensive stance, and looked at Eric warily. Captain, it's useless. You are no match for me. I have also been injected with the super soldier potion, and I have more than that. Eric waved his hand gently, and the famous shield floated over and slowly floated in front of Steve. Steve hesitated, took the shield, and blocked it in front of his chest, still keeping alert. Magic. Or other messed up things. Let me tell you, I've seen more bizarre things. Yes, such as the big green fat man. The god wielding a hammer. The playboy flying around in iron armor. The magician who plays close combat. The talking raccoon. And the big tree that can walk. Eric said casually, spreading his hands, Captain, I know you are from the future. I say again, I have no ill intentions, I just want to talk to you. As Eric mentioned the familiar characters one by one, Steve's face gradually changed. He looked at Eric in shock. Who are you? I come from a parallel universe. The two finally sat down. Steve poured Eric a cup of coffee, but Eric's first sentence shocked him. This was more outrageous than his crossing the timeline. A parallel universe refers to other universes that are separated from a certain universe and exist in parallel with the original universe, which are both similar and different. According to quantum mechanics. Afraid that Steve didn't understand, Eric began to explain the concept of parallel universe to him. But Steve interrupted him. Eric, I only have a high school diploma. Eric's breath was choked. Okay, I'll try to keep it simple. No. What I mean is that I only have a high school diploma, but I know all this. After marrying Carter, I have been drawing comics to make a living. In comics, parallel universes are used up. Steve picked up the coffee and smiled and gestured to Eric. Obviously, he did it on purpose. Okay, Captain, I just want to know, how am I in the future? Eric can't appreciate his dry humor now, and asked the doubts in his heart directly. You. Steve looked at him doubtfully. I don't seem to have heard of you in that future. What about Alice Industries? Eric asked again hurriedly. No. Steve hesitated for a moment and still shook his head. What about the maglev train? Has any company made it? Maglev train. Steve suddenly slapped his forehead and said, I remember it. I was wondering why it sounded so familiar. You are the lucky guy who developed the maglev train. I saw you in the newspaper. They said they would give you a Nobel Prize. Captain, I am not interested in the Nobel Prize. Eric interrupted him impatiently. I just want to know, in that future, are there any traces of my existence? Steve thought for a long time before slowly shaking his head. I'm afraid not. I have never heard of you and your company, and no company has built a maglev train in the United States. There is no him in the future. Eric frowned, thinking this was unreasonable. He exists objectively, but not in the memory of the old Captain America. In other words, his arrival has completely changed the direction of the world. The future will be different from what the old Captain America remembers. But if this is true, why does the old Captain America still exist? Captain, come with me to New York. I think only she can answer my doubts. Going to New York. After hearing Eric's words, Steve couldn't help but be startled, with a look of reminiscence on his face, and slowly shook his head. Since I got married to Carter, I rarely go out. Of course Eric understands what he means. Captain, I will take you invisible and fly over. No one will see you, I promise. Are you Strange's teacher? In the New York temple, Steve looked at the ancient master curiously. This was not his first time coming to the New York temple, but it was the first time he had seen the legendary master. The patron saint of the earth. No, it's the future teacher. He is still just a trainee surgeon. Ji Yuyi also looked at Steve, with green rays of light flashing in his eyes. Master, do you know what's going on? Eric interrupted the exchange between the two of them. He was eager to know the answer. Don't you already know? Ji Yuyi suddenly laughed, closed the folding fan in his hand, and drew a circle in the air. Parallel universe. Eric blurted out. He already had a conclusion in his mind, but he just couldn't believe it. In the sky, the circle with golden light suddenly became blurred, and then slowly separated, turning into two extremely similar circles. Yes, parallel universe. Eric, you should feel honored. The moment you came to this world, a new parallel universe was born. A new parallel universe was born, which is a big deal for the entire multiverse. However, in a single universe, only a few powerful bosses or people like Ancient One who have the support of a boss can sense this matter. Small characters, like Captain America and Eric won't even sneeze. According to Ancient One, such a big thing will naturally be taken care of by a high-level person. Small characters like them should just do what they should do and not meddle in other people's business. This is very much in line with Captain America's wishes. For him, returning from the future and spending his life peacefully with his beloved woman is nothing more important than this. For this, he even gave up his honor and faith, and would rather hide in the basement all day long, letting the outside world collapse and crack, and stay with Carter forever. As for the underground secret room, it was built by Howard Stark for Captain America. Using the power of the cosmic cube, that is, the space gem, a space similar to the pocket dimension was opened there. After sending Captain America, who was ready to continue being a salted fish, back to England, Eric returned to his villa, opened a bottle of beer and lay motionless on the sofa, his expression becoming more and more bitter. Before leaving, Ancient One told him another piece of news that he didn't know whether it was good or bad. More big guys noticed this universe, or noticed him. The collision of two parallel universes, the birth of a new parallel universe, and the interference of the Life Tribunal all made this newly born parallel universe special. For some big guys who were bored, this parallel universe was enough to attract their attention. Of course, maybe they just glanced at it, but it was enough to make some changes in the world. For example, the senior otaku Satorak, he was really too bored. He had nothing to do every day and threw stones everywhere. Now he suddenly found a new parallel universe and glanced at it. Haha, there were still his stones in it, so he had to take a good look. This look was incredible. What did it mean? The silly kid who picked up his stone was not affected by his magic. His character became better and better. Good guy Red Tank. Bah, I am the dimensional demon. The source of evil. There is a good man under my command. I can't afford to lose that man. So, Juggernaut is embarrassed. Sidorak is taking back his magic power, and his power is weakening. He may not be able to sense it now, but the weakening speed will get faster and faster until he becomes an ordinary person. No, he can't even be an ordinary person. Sidorak's magic has infected him for decades. If it is all taken away, what will happen to him? I'm afraid that leaving a whole body is the best ending. These are what Ancient One told him, and he also got confirmation from Professor X. Juggernaut's personality is getting better and better, and he gets angry less and less, but his power is constantly weakening. Professor X thought it was because the food at home was not good, so his half-brother was not full, so he had been giving him extra meals in various ways during this period. Red Tank was a poor kid. He was suppressed by his genius brother, since he was a child, and was often beaten by his father. He was mentally distorted since he was a child. He finally encountered a good opportunity, but it was still Cytoric, a pitfall. His IQ, which was not high to begin with, dropped drastically, and he became the stupid look he is now. Besides, in 2 universes and 3 lives, Red Tank was Eric's capable subordinate. No matter how he calculated it, Eric should save him. But how to save him? Don't even think about fighting with Cytoric. He is a big boss at the multiverse level. Eric can't even stand his eyes, so he can only find another way. How about changing his color? Red Tank to Green Tank. Eric raised his eyebrows, and a bold idea suddenly popped up in his mind. The more he thought about it, the more feasible it seemed. Maybe it won't change color. I remember Ross seemed to become Red Hulk. Eric nodded secretly, deciding the future fate of Red Hulk. Eric, you're back. The crisp voice of a little girl interrupted Eric's meditation. It was still dark when Eric came back. He sat on the sofa for a long time before it was dawn. He turned his head and looked at the door. He saw a cute little girl wearing a bear robe, standing at the door with sleepy eyes. She held the teddy bear in one hand and rubbed her eyes with the other hand. Her smooth little feet stepped on the floor, and her long black and smooth hair was casually draped over her shoulders. So cute. Eric's eyes were shining, and he really wanted to hold her and rub her. Ahem, Sky, why did you get up so early? Are you hungry? No, I haven't slept yet. Sky pursed her lips and struggled for a while. She glanced at Eric and told the truth. You haven't slept yet. Eric stood up immediately and raised his voice. What time is it? Why haven't you slept yet? Sky shrank her neck and looked at Eric timidly. Uncle Barton taught me a kind of kung fu to shoot arrows at night. I'm practicing. Barton. Eric yelled, scaring Sky. Tears suddenly rolled in her eyes, and she was about to cry. Oh, sorry, Sky, I scared you, it's none of your business. I have something to talk to your Uncle Barton about. Can you go back to the bedroom and go to bed first? Eric coaxed Sky back to the bedroom in a soft voice, and then began a passionate conversation with Barton. Sky slept until 4 in the afternoon. When she got up, she was startled by Patton with two panda eyes. Her smart little brain knew what happened after a little thought, and she stuck out her tongue at Patton apologetically. In the next few days, Eric seemed to be suffering from laziness. He stayed at home and fought with Patton from time to time. He also added a lot of cool but useless tricks in the fight. Then he relied on his strong physical fitness to crush Patton, making Sky, an amateur, constantly cast admiring eyes, and his vanity was greatly satisfied. The nanny and tutor hired by Jennifer arrived one after another, and Sky was sent to the most expensive elementary school in New York. Patton was relieved at this time, because he had to pick up Sky to go to school every day, and panda eyes could easily cause misunderstandings. Eric cancelled the daily competition. Alice Industries has long been on the right track. There are people responsible for the company's major and minor matters. Only some major decisions will use him as the president. Eric has become a complete idler. His daily work is only to be an NPC and let his daughter complete the task of 10 sentences a day. 10 sentences a day, this task is regarded as a top priority by Sky, and he even bought a small notebook for this purpose to record how many sentences are completed every day. On this day, Eric is still a salted fish, but a phone call broke the tranquility of the villa. Eric, this is Fury, I need your help. You called the wrong number, bye. Eric hung up the phone directly, and then moved his fingers slightly to disconnect all the phone lines in his home. In the Marvel universe, it is definitely not a good thing to meet a boiled egg. The first time I met him, I encountered kidnappers holding hostages. The second time I met him, Black Widow came to pry open his safe. The third time I met him, he was directly dragged to fight vampires. This guy is a plague god, you must hide if you can. Unfortunately, some people, even if you want to hide, you may not be able to hide. In less than 5 minutes, Eric sensed Coulson's human magnetic field outside his house. Eric shook his head helplessly. He didn't expect that it was Coulson who came. He still has a good impression of this good old man, so he should give him face. You mean, a woman fell from the sky? Smashed a video store. Eric looked strange, and flipped through the photos Coulson gave him. Woman, Best Buy video store, isn't that Captain Marvel? Then why are you looking for me? You should go to that woman or the insurance company. Mr. Eric, we may be threatened from outside. Commander Fury said he needs your help. Coulson always maintained a very friendly smile, making it difficult for people to get angry. Outside. What outside? Outside the Earth. Coulson pointed to the sky. Eric looked at him strangely. Outside the Earth. Aliens. Then you should go to Area 51 or NASA. Why are you looking for me, a railway builder? Mr. Eric, Commander Fury said you are from a special department. Coulson took out another photo from his pocket and handed it to Eric. Last time we cleared vampires, our satellite took some special photos. Eric took the photo and looked at it carefully. The main body of the photo was the Earth, occupying 4/5 of the photo. Only a small area in the upper left corner, at the edge of the atmosphere, could see something else. It was a disc-shaped thing, very blurry, but it was enough to explain the problem. That was the solar storm energy converter he made. Eric believed that if Coulson could take out this photo, there must be a higher pixel and clearer one. Finally saw it. I thought the satellites on the Earth were blind. No one noticed it last time when there was such a big commotion. Eric's mouth corners could not help but curl up slightly. Yes, that time, he deliberately showed his ability. If he wanted to hide, he only needed to distort the light, but he didn't. He had been hiding for so long, it was almost time. However, he still had to pretend. Eric crumpled the photo into a ball with a helpless look on his face and sighed, I was careless. Tell me, what do you need me for? We need to go to Los Angeles. Poncho Bar, Los Angeles. Eric sensed the suffocating magnetic field from a long distance away from the bar. In the world of magnetic fields, the source of the magnetic field was like a small sun, emitting energy all the time. I didn't expect she is so strong now. Eric muttered and walked into the bar. Eric, you're finally here. Nick Fury saw him and stood up hurriedly, opening his arms to give him a hug. Eric brushed him away and tilted his head to look at the source of the super strong magnetic field. Are you the woman who fell from the sky that Coulson said? An alien. I didn't expect that there would be such a powerful person on Earth. The energy of your physical energy even exceeds that of a space battleship. The woman stared at Eric, her eyes glowing slightly, and slowly walked to the opposite side of Eric. I didn't expect that one day I would be able to meet such a powerful alien. Eric stared at her increasingly bright eyes and suddenly smiled. Eric Lanshier, welcome to Earth, ma'am. Birth, from the Kree Star Troopers. Carol Danvers still called herself Birth, which made Eric secretly sigh at the power of the supreme wisdom. Oh, Kree. As far as I know, the Kree are not very friendly. Speaking of the Kree, Eric's tone suddenly became a little cold. Whether it was him or Magneto, they hated the Kree to the bone. In the Emperor Thanos universe, Magneto's last wife died at the hands of the Kree. It was because the Kree fled to Earth that Emperor Thanos chased them. Carol frowned when she heard this. Do you know the Kree? Why do you say the Kree are unfriendly? We have been maintaining the order and peace of the universe. Use force and violence. Ronan's notoriety is one of the best in the universe. Eric's words made the atmosphere freeze to the extreme. Shut up. Ronan is a hero. I won't let you insult him. Carol raised her fist, which was faintly glowing red, and was about to hit it. Calm down, both of you. Calm down. Nick Fury stood between the two men cautiously, trying to break off Carol's fist, but he didn't dare to do so after seeing the red light on it. Both of you, I know you are all very powerful, so please consider the lives of ordinary people like us, okay? Eric shrugged, took a beer and sat down. Okay, Fury, tell me, what's going on? How are the Kree involved? How should I know? This is the first time I've heard the word Kree today. But you, when did you know so much about aliens? Nick Fury calmed Carol down, turned around and glared at Eric viciously. I'm from a special department, have you forgotten? Eric narrowed his eyes, drank the beer in one breath, and burped for a long time, causing Carol to turn her head away in disgust. Special department. Humph. After this is over, I must find out which special department you belong to. Nick Fury snorted coldly and began to introduce the whole story. Of course, the facts he mentioned were all told to him by Carol. In Nick Fury's introduction, an evil and ugly Skrull team ambushed and attacked the interstellar team where Carol was. Carol fell into the trap and was accidentally captured. The evil Skrulls tried to tamper with her memory, but were counter-killed by the brave Carol. Not only did they destroy their spaceship, but they also learned the purpose of their coming to Earth. Hey, man, has your superior been brainwashed by an alien woman? After listening to Nick Fury's explanation, Eric turned his head, covered his mouth with one hand, and asked Coulson in a low voice that everyone could hear. Eric, I saw with my own eyes a green-skinned alien transformed into Coulson's appearance. And I killed him with my own hands. Nick Fury almost roared. Okay, I get it, what should we do next? Go fight the shape-shifting goblins. We need to go to an Air Force base. Carol stopped Nick Fury, who wanted to swear. The Skrulls are looking for someone named Wendy Lawson. She participated in a mission called Project Pegasus. We need to sneak into the Air Force base to find these materials. Sneak into the Air Force base? Are you sure you're not kidding? Eric stood up with a look on his face that said you're kidding me, picked up the phone from the bar and dialed. Hello, General Ross, I have a small favor to ask you for. With General Ross opening the back door, Eric and his men were directly taken into the base by an Air Force helicopter. Under the warm reception of an Air Force colonel, Carol and Nick Fury went to the archives to find information, but Eric stayed in the command post to chat with General Ross. Coincidentally, General Ross happened to come to this base to work today. General Ross, I went to Russia last time and brought back 2 bottles of top-quality Adelong vodka. You must come to my place to taste it when you have time. Eric smiled and clinked glasses with General Ross, and drank the whiskey in the glass. Haha, that's great, Eric, the Highland Night you gave me last time tasted great. When talking about good wine, General Ross's eyes narrowed, and his face was full of aftertaste. General, it's good that you like it. I'll ask Jennifer to order a few more bottles from the UK. How about we hold a wine party? Every businessman knows how to cater to the needs of others, and Eric will naturally do better. Oh. When? I will definitely be there. General Ross's eyes lit up, and he couldn't wait to leave now. Haha, General Ross, how about waiting until this matter is done? I just heard that the General's experiment has also made progress. I'm afraid he doesn't have time to come out and play now. That's right. Speaking of the experiment, General Ross's excitement suddenly decreased a lot. It seems that his experiment is not going well. General, do you know this Pegasus project that Fury and others are talking about? Eric observed his expression and hurriedly changed the subject. Ross raised his eyebrows and glanced at him, put down the wine glass in his hand, and walked to the window with his hands behind his back. This plan is approved by me. Dr. Wendy Lawson is a very talented scientist. If her light-speed engine can be successfully developed, then our Air Force will be the fastest Air Force in the world. We are already the fastest now. Eric came over and stood side by side with General Ross, looking at the fighter planes waiting to fly outside the window, feeling emotional. General Ross shook his head and said, I'm not talking about the fastest on Earth. Eric heard this and rolled his eyes and looked up at the sky speechlessly. It seems that you are still thinking about the fastest in the universe. Have you seen the Rainbow Bridge in Asgard? Have you seen the magician's teleportation? Did this plan succeed later? No, the plan was terminated, General Ross sighed. Drive Wendy Lawson conducted a test flight without approval, not only crashed the plane, but also sacrificed a pilot. If this plan is not terminated, some people will gossip. Look. A subtle cat cry came, and Eric's hair stood up immediately. A sense of extreme danger made his superpowers instantly work to the extreme. Evoker. Eric confirmed its identity after hearing a cry. It was a beast ranked among the best in the universe. It would swallow him without leaving any bones. General, you still have a cat. Cat. General Ross turned his head in confusion and saw an orange cat's tail disappearing from the corner. Oh, that's Dr. Wendy Lawson's cat. It has been living in this base since Dr. Wendy Lawson died. Anyone who sees it can feed it. Feed it if you see it. I'm afraid everyone who sees it will be fed. Eric shuddered and repeatedly warned himself to stay away from that thing. He likes furry things, such as kittens, puppies, sky, etc., but he doesn't want this kind of furry thing that can swallow him in one bite. Eric and General Ross chatted for a few more minutes, and Carol came back with a file bag in her arms, looking worried. Behind her was Nick Fury, the fearless and lifeless person who never gave up. She was holding the orange cat that even Eric had to stay away from, and she kept petting it. Don't tell me you can't see how dangerous this thing is. Eric approached Carol and whispered. Carol looked back at the orange cat in surprise. Is it dangerous? I don't think its energy is high. Eric immediately understood that this elder sister could only sense the level of energy, and used it as a standard to measure strength. His energy is contained in his body cells, so Carol can naturally sense it, but the energy of the element devourer is almost all hidden in the dimensional space in its stomach. Carol can't sense it, so she thinks it's not a big threat. Who is the cutest cat? Huh. Nick Fury was stroking the devourer desperately. Eric subconsciously stepped back a few steps and stayed away from him. He might become cat food someday. Did you get anything? Carol hesitated and took out a photo from the file bag. In the photo, two people were shaking hands. Behind them stood a black woman. Behind them, a woman was climbing out of a plane. Eric put the photo next to Carol's head and compared it back and forth. He was amazed. Hey, look at this woman who got off the plane. She looks like you. The photo was taken 6 years ago. I just arrived at Hara 6 years ago. I lost my memory and only have 6 years of memory. Carol's voice was very soft, and her tone was full of doubts. Do you still need to ask? You must have been captured and brainwashed by the Kree. Eric raised his eyebrows and said very confidently. If it was when she first arrived on Earth, Carol would have definitely loudly refuted Eric's point of view, but now she was also full of doubts in her heart. Facing Eric's slander, she was speechless for a while. Where are you going next? Seeing that she didn't say anything, Eric put the photo back into the file bag and asked her directly about her destination. Louisiana. Go find someone, a friend. Carol's tone was uncertain, and her expression was full of doubts. The air base was not short of planes, and General Ross directly sent a transport plane to them. On the plane, Carol kept looking at the photos in silence, Nick Fury kept stroking the Devourer, and Eric and the two soldiers who were flying the plane chatted casually. The plane encountered an updraft and bumped a bit. The Devourer, who had been lying on Nick Fury's legs, suddenly jumped down, ignoring Nick Fury's call, and jumped directly onto Eric's legs, scaring Eric and almost opening the magnetic field shield. Fury. How did it come here? Take it away. Hey, man, it likes you. Nick Fury came over and scratched its chin. Who is the cutest cat? Fury, take it away. Eric's body retreated desperately, his eyes fixed on the Devourer's mouth, ready to open the shield at any time. Don't do that, Eric, you scared it. Nick Fury gently picked up the Devourer. Let's go, little cutie, he doesn't welcome you. Who would welcome that thing? Eric muttered softly, but his hand was not slow. He quickly wiped his leg, grabbed a cat hair in his hand, and put it away. Aunt Carol. Mom, it's Aunt Carol. I knew it, everyone said you were dead. The plane landed in the backyard of a Louisiana family, and a little black girl ran over happily, hugged Carol tightly and called her aunt, which made Carol's expression even more confused. The person she was looking for, Maria Rambeau, was even more confused than her, and then there was a very bloody and familiar recognition link. After the two women had a long talk and watched a lot of old photos together, Carol finally remembered her identity as an Earthling. Eric watched the whole process and sat aside with Nick Fury. He stood up and walked towards the back door until there was a knock on the door. When Carol and others dealt with Maria's fat neighbor, Eric had already sat back in the living room with a green alien. Hey, man, can't you be a little more friendly? The green alien dusted himself off and stood up complaining, where's my Coke? You'd better behave yourself. Nick Fury drew his gun instantly. Eric, why don't you tie him up or knock him out? Oh my god. Maria Rambeau suddenly looked out the window and saw her daughter talking to someone who looked exactly like her. Skrulls, bloody and brutal Andromeda people, they can transform into anyone. Relying on this ability, they have overthrown the regimes of countless planets. Carol explained to Maria in a low voice, and her fists began to glow slightly. No one will hurt her, as long as you don't kill me. We have to take some precautions, right? The green-skinned alien looked confident of victory, and even gestured to Eric. Let me introduce myself, Talos, the bloody and brutal Skrull. Precautions. Are you sure? Areta sneered at Talos's measures, and raised her hand gently. The Skrull outside the window, who had turned into Maria Rambeau, suddenly floated up, as if tightened by an invisible rope, revealing an expression of suffocation. Talos's expression froze, and he pouted his lips and made a helpless gesture, and then he was pressed to the ground by Nick Fury, who rushed over. Maria stepped forward and punched him hard twice, then ran out of the door and hugged her daughter. I didn't expect that Earthlings would have this ability. Talos was finally tied up, but he still looked fearless. Tell me, what's the situation? From the look of you, it seems that you don't plan to start a war. Eric moved a stool and sat down opposite Talos. Of course. We never wanted to go to war. Talos looked wronged. We just wanted to ask her for a small favor. What small favor? Help me crack a coordinate, that's all. Carol sneered. Crack the coordinate. The last time you hung me up was also to crack the coordinate. Last time we didn't know you were so special. Talos hurriedly raised his hands to show his innocence, but unexpectedly broke the rope that tied him, and was immediately embarrassed, like an actor who messed up his performance, looking at the rope on the ground and smacking his lips. Sorry, your rope may not be of good quality. Okay, we won't tie you up, you continue talking. Eric waved his hand and cut off all the remaining ropes. Talos stood up and smiled at Eric. Thank you. I have a recording here, from the Pegasus Project. I believe you will be interested. The Pegasus Project was funded by the Air Force and led by Dr. Wendy Lawson. The purpose was to develop a light-speed engine. Carol and Maria were both Dr. Wendy Lawson's test pilots. Input coordinates. The recording played slowly, and countless memory fragments flashed before Carol's eyes. The doubts in her heart gradually unraveled, making her unable to calm down for a long time. Dr. Wendy Lawson, who worked with her, was not an Earthling, but a Kree named Luwil. Her ability was not given by the Kree, but was obtained by absorbing the energy in the energy core developed by Luwil after it exploded, Her admired mentor and superior, Jan Rog, was the one who shot down her plane and took her back to the Kree. We are all victims. The Kree destroyed our home planet and made us homeless. This is an unjust war. All we want is a home. Talos stood in front of Carol and said sincerely, Lowell helped us develop the light-speed engine, not for war, but just to enable us to escape from the pursuit of the Kree and go to a place where the Kree can't find us. Look, what did I say? The Kree are a bunch of lunatics. Even their home planet was destroyed. Eric fanned the flames on the side, and put on an expression of watching a show, and he almost took out a bag of popcorn. Lawson has always taught us that the Pegasus Project will not become an accomplice of the war, but the end of the war. Maria also stepped forward to make up for it. Lowell hopes that you can help us find the energy core, which will drive the light-speed engine and take us to a new home. So I ask you, help us. Talos bowed slightly and lowered his head. Carol's fists lit up red again. See. My ability, it comes from the energy core. The energy core has been destroyed, and I absorbed its energy. Only the light-speed engine was destroyed, and the energy core was hidden by Lowell in a remote place. That coordinate, it can take us to the energy core. After saying that, Talos looked at Rokard with a look of desire. Carol stared at Talos, and you're going to use it to wipe us out. We just want a family. Seeing Talos showing his true feelings, Carol was finally moved and slowly revealed the secret of the coordinates. Those numbers are not coordinates, but state vectors, which are used to locate orbits and frequencies. Her lab isn't on Earth, so you can't find it. The coordinates indicate the orbital position of the laboratory 6 years ago. As long as the orbit is calculated, we can find its position. They're all taught in middle school physics. With one sentence each, Carol and Maria easily answered the secret that had troubled the Skrulls for several years. Talos looked in disbelief and complained to his men, it's that simple. You don't even understand this, how can you still are you embarrassed to be the chief scientist? Jan Rog will come to me soon. We have to find the energy core before him. Carol shrugged and added a deadline to the tasks of several people. We're going to outer space. How? Maria's question made Nick Fury couldn't help but look at Eric. If the photos they took were okay, then Eric might have a way to go to outer space. When Eric saw Nick Fury looking at him, he couldn't help but shrink his neck innocently. Eric refused to help, so Talos had to ask his chief scientist, who had never graduated from high school mathematics, to modify Eric's plane. The two soldiers who flew the plane were given $10,000 each by Eric, and they took a taxi back happily. As for the plane, they were not worried. Eric contacted General Ross in front of them, and General Ross took the plane without saying a word. The plane sent him off. In their opinion, Eric's identity must not be simple. As for how extraordinary it is, that is not something they can worry about. While the chief scientist of Skrull went to modify the aircraft, Eric and Nick Fury sat on the steps with a bottle of beer and chatted. Unexpectedly, the Skrulls are actually victims. Nick Fury lamented the uncertainty of the world. Victim. Huh. Eric raised the corner of his mouth and snorted coldly, making Nick Fury puzzled. Why did they lie? It's not too much of a lie, but do you know how big the Skrull Empire is? Do you know how many people they have? Eric looked at the stars in the sky and took a sip of beer. How big is it? Bigger than the Earth. Nick Fury patted the steps under his butt and took a sip of wine. They have a population of at least 30 billion, and at least hundreds of administrative stars. After the destruction of the main star, the Skrulls split into many forces, and Talos is only a very weak one among them. PFF'd. Nick Fury spat out a mouthful of beer with a look of disbelief on his face. It's impossible, right? Then why are they still being hunted by the Kree? Because the Kree are stronger. Eric took another sip of wine and said faintly, this universe is huge, but our Earth is small. Nick Fury fell silent and drank in silence. After the bottle of wine was at the bottom, he spoke again. Can you tell me about the alien forces in the universe? The Kree, Skrull, and Shi'ar, the three great empires of the universe, each have entered interstellar civilization for millions of years. One of their fleets can destroy the entire solar system. Moreover, legend has it that they have things that ordinary people can't imagine. Forbidden weapons. Eric put down the empty wine bottle and opened another one. In addition to these three empires, there is also sovereign in the universe who wants to paint everything gold, and calls himself the policeman of the universe. Dar, the utopian Janravi, the humanoid reptilian Badang. Eric spoke slowly, and Nick Fury's brows furrowed more and more as he listened. In Eric's narration, it seemed that every force was many times more powerful than the Earth. Eric, how do you know so much about the universe? Because I'm in the special department. Special department. Nick Fury threw the beer bottle fiercely. Can't you tell the truth to me? That's the truth. Eric rolled his eyes, took another bottle of wine, stood up and walked towards Talos. Tell me the truth. Eric took Talos aside and raised the magnetic field shield, blocking the surrounding electromagnetic waves and visible light. How was Skrull's main star destroyed? Of course it was the Kree. Pa. Ouch. Before Talos could finish his sentence, he was slapped to the ground by Eric. There's no one else here, you don't need to lie. Eric lifted him up with one hand, put him on the ground, and patted the dirt on his clothes. I didn't lie. Snap. Talos received another slap in the face, causing him to slide 4 to 5 meters on the ground before stopping. Eric raised his hand expressionlessly, and Talos floated over. Actually, I have a way to control your thinking and let you tell everything you know, but I just don't want to use it today. I haven't hit anyone in a long time. Itch. Talos spit out a mouthful of green blood and smiled miserably. I'm telling the truth. Wrong answer. Bang. It's really. Wrong answer. Pop. It's the Kree. Wrong answer. Pop. Talos received more than a dozen slaps in a row. He lay on the ground and could not get up again, gasping for breath feebly. It seems I need to remind you, Galactus. Eric called Talos back again, letting him hang upside down, and whispered softly in his ear. Talos's eyes suddenly widened and his lips trembled. No. 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 It's the Kree. It's their forbidden weapon. Seeing his performance, Eric had already determined the answer in his mind and shook his head slowly. Legend has it that as the planet devourer of the 5 creation gods, his duty is to maintain the balance of the universe and clean up those who are too destructive in the universe. Or a worthless civilization and planet. It seems that Skrull has little value to this universe. No. Skrull is one of the 3 great empires in the universe. We have millions of years of history. How could it be worthless? It's Galactus. He made a mistake. Yes, he made a mistake. Talos suddenly became confused. Somewhat crazy, Eric sighed and gently tapped his forehead to make him fall into coma. His guess was indeed correct. Skrull's main star was not destroyed by the Kree, but was devoured by the planet devourer. This is a fact that no Skrull is willing to accept. No Skrull is willing to admit that his tribe is of no value to the universe. Early the next morning, Eric and others came to the plane and looked at the modification results of the chief scientist. Everyone was extremely surprised. I didn't expect that you are not good at math, but you are very good at hands-on skills. Nick Fury praised and took the lead on the plane. Taros, why is your face swollen? Carol suddenly found that Taros's face was fatter than yesterday. Taros touched his face blankly. I think I fell down. I don't remember. You didn't lose your memory too. Eric chuckled, patted his shoulder, and walked onto the plane. When everyone got on the plane, they found that in addition to them, there was another stowaway on the plane, the orange cat, the devourer. How did it get on the plane? Hurry up and take it down. Taros was so scared that he pressed against the door of the plane and dared not move. Nick Fury picked up the orange cat. Hey, you are afraid of a cat like Eric. That's not a cat. That's the devourer. You idiot. Seeing that Nick Fury was about to pet the cat, Eric finally couldn't help but tell the truth. Devouring beast. What is that? Is it your nickname? Little cutie. Nick Fury thought Eric was joking and continued to pet the devourer fearlessly. Eric rolled his eyes and ignored the idiot. It seems that the devourer seems to like Nick Fury a little bit. No matter how he stroked it, he didn't raise his claws to him. Let him be. A group of 4 Earthlings, 2 Skrulls, and an element-devouring beast drove a temporarily modified space plane out of the atmosphere and arrived at the coordinates marked. Carol used Kree technology to lift the stealth system of the spacecraft finally revealed the spacecraft to everyone. Looking at the Kree spacecraft slowly appearing in front of him, Eric's eyes couldn't help but narrowed, his eyes full of greed. The boring plot is finally over, and we have finally reached the exciting harvest stage. This is a complete Kree spacecraft, and it is also a scientific research spacecraft. It not only has a complete Kree technology laboratory, but also a black technology device that can shield Eric's magnetic field induction. If the stealth device of the spacecraft is not turned off, Eric can't even sense the magnetic field fluctuations of the spacecraft. This spaceship belongs to me. Eric had no hidden thoughts about his greed and said it bluntly, leaving everyone on the plane stunned. You haven't figured anything out yet, and you're already distributing the spoils. And he just swallowed it all to himself. How shameless. No. This ship belongs to Dr. Wendy Lawson. Don't even think about it. This is the Skrull's last hope. What did you say? I didn't hear clearly. Man, are you crazy? Meow. A group of people were all talking, and even the element-devouring beast let out a soft cry, as if they were opposing Eric. Eric ignored them at all and looked at the huge spaceship outside the window with a smile. The more he looked at it, the more he liked it and he wished he could move home now. Eric, what do you want to do? Nick Fury pulled his shoulder and asked in a low voice, while making wild eyes. Eric felt slightly and knew that the two Skrulls had raised their guns at him. I don't like people pointing guns at me. Eric moved his fingers slightly, and the guns in the hands of the two Skrulls suddenly turned into a ball of scrap metal. He slowly turned around and looked at everyone with a smile. Everyone, can anyone tell me what the purpose of this spaceship is? Help the Skrulls escape from the Kree's pursuit and led them to find a new home. Carol's expression was very stiff, and she looked at Eric with alert eyes. Yes, in that case, how about I give the Skrulls a new home, and this spaceship belongs to me? Eric pointed to the spaceship outside the window with a smile. A spaceship for a safe home, this deal how? New home. Where? Talos stared at Eric and asked cautiously, but as soon as he finished speaking, he felt a burning pain on his face. He touched his cheek in confusion, but couldn't think of anything. An uninhabited planet, a planet suitable for survival, but far away from the Kree. What? Confused X5. You heard me right, a safe and livable unmanned planet, in exchange for a small spaceship, is a very good deal, isn't it? A profiteer-like smile appeared on Eric's face. I don't believe it. Talos' green face was full of distrust. I don't believe you can own a planet unless you can prove it to me. Eric looked at him like he was an idiot. What do you think a planet is? A golf ball. Can it be carried in your pocket? If you can't prove it, I won't believe you. When it comes to the life and death of his people, Talos has to be cautious. Hey, guys, let's solve the trouble at hand first. Nick Fury suddenly interrupted the dispute between the two, pointing out the window with a look of panic. Carol looked out the window and his expression became solemn. It's the Star Troopers spaceship, Yon-Rogg is here. Get on the spaceship quickly, my family is on top. Talos suddenly panicked and threw himself on the driver's seat to operate the plane. I want this one too. Eric looked at the approaching spaceship with joy and stopped Talos's movements. Man, I think you should go see a doctor. I know a very good psychiatrist, who is also a black man. I got married a few days ago and gave him a license. Nick Fury patted Eric on the shoulder. His face was full of worry and concern, his eyes looked like he cared for a mentally retarded child. Eric pushed Nick Fury away and went straight to the cabin door. You guys go up first, I'll be back as soon as I can. Are you serious? That's outer space. Nick Fury was shocked and wanted to step forward to stop him, but Carol opened the hatch first and Eric was immediately sucked out. Calmly closing the hatch again, Carol saw everyone staring at her dumbfounded and shrugged innocently. He went there on his own. Carol, I have taken note of this grudge. Eric muttered to himself as he floated in space, looking at the plane going away. The Star Troopers spaceship was getting closer and closer. Eric straightened his messed up hair and pointed his hands at the spacecraft. With the memory of Magneto, Eric is very experienced in dealing with the Kree spacecraft. Directly using superpowers to attack a spaceship that can perform space jumps is something only a fool would do. Eric first used magnetic field induction to scan the entire spacecraft, then tapped his finger to shut down the spacecraft and its engine, and then controlled the spacecraft slowly. Slow down. By the time the spacecraft arrived in front of Eric, its speed was almost as fast as a snail. Eric put his face close to the bay window of the spaceship, grinned at Yon-Rogg who was stunned when his finger pressed on the missile launch button, spread his fingers slightly, and violently opened the hatch of the spacecraft. The Star Troopers spaceship is much larger than Eric's temporarily modified space plane. The isolation area at the hatch is very complete and will not be sucked into space like just now. Eric ignored the weapons of the Star Troopers, closed the hatch, straightened his clothes, then opened the isolation area and walked out slowly. This spaceship belongs to me now. Your Excellency, who are you? This spaceship belongs to the Kree Empire Star Troopers. It is. Yang Rog was very cautious and did not order an attack. He knew very well that they were not able to compete with the strong ones who could survive in the universe, so he could only move out of the Kree Empire, hoping to scare Eric away. Eric shook his head and stopped talking nonsense with them. He opened his palm and a coin shot out from his palm, flying around in the spacecraft like lightning, and finally stopped in front of Yang Rog's head. Perhaps your life should be reserved for Carol. A drop of blue blood slipped from the coin and fell on Yang Rog's eyebrows. His eyes widened and he did not dare to move at all. It was only then that the other members of Star Troopers fell to the ground one by one. Without exception, they all had a vertical gap between their eyebrows, and blue blood was constantly seeping out. This is my trophy. Don't throw it away. Let's put it home first. Eric punched Yang Rog unconscious and happily controlled the spacecraft to fly to the Earth. You've made a profit this time, haha. Eric squinted his eyes to sense the situation of the spacecraft. When he saw the corpse on the ground, his eyes suddenly lit up. Wait, the corpse of the Kree can still refine GH-325, nor can it. Waste it, sell it to Nick Fury. By the time Eric sent the invisible Star Troopers spaceship back to his backyard and then returned to Lou Will's experimental spaceship, more than half an hour had passed. Eric had just boarded the spaceship when he noticed something strange. Nick Fury and a group of Skrulls were captured. What's going on? I wiped out the Star Troopers, how come you were still captured? Where did these Kree people come from? Eric rescued them effortlessly, and he was very curious about the origins of these Kree people. Ronan. Ronan is here. A Skrull woman explained to Eric with a horrified face. Ronan. Eric's eyes condensed. Where is Carol? Captured by Ronan. Nick Fury rescued the Devourer from the cage and took off its muzzle. They also took the energy core. Where did they go? Eric asked hurriedly. Towards the Earth. Magnetic field shielding device. Eric cursed inwardly and turned his head to fly towards the Earth. As soon as he reached the atmosphere, Eric happened to catch up with the Kree warship's uncloaking state, and the magnetic field shielding device was also turned off, and the warship's huge magnetic field reaction was immediately exposed to Eric. Eric let out a long breath. He could sense the magnetic field of the warship, and he was no longer anxious. When fighting with these alien races with advanced technology, Eric was most afraid of the magnetic field shielding device. As long as the other party turned on this thing, he would be in the dark. In the Emperor Thanos universe, the Kree and the Earth fought. At first, the Kree did not realize the importance of magnetic field shielding. As long as they were away from the magnetic field riot areas in the universe, they would turn off the device, which made the Kree suffer a great loss when facing Magneto. Later, they learned their lesson. No matter when, the magnetic field shielding must be turned on throughout the process, and not only large warships like Ronan, but also small spaceships like Star Troopers are equipped with it. The Kree in this universe have not experienced the baptism of Magneto, and they carelessly exposed all the magnetic field reactions of their warships. Perhaps in their understanding, the Earth is just a backward planet in a remote corner. Earthlings haven't even left their own planet, so how could they pose a threat to their warships? Strange. This should be Captain Marvel's highlight moment. Why hasn't Carol come out yet? Eric frowned and scanned the Kree warships one by one. Just a short delay, the missile hatches of the Kree warships were all opened, and countless Kree missiles with blue light flashing flew towards the Earth ferociously. Hey, I didn't want to take your chance to show off, but you can't blame me if you don't do it yourself. Eric shook his head helplessly and raised one hand to aim at the missiles. I saw that the speed of the missiles was getting slower and slower, and finally they were suspended in the air, motionless. Obviously, the flames ejected from the tail of the missiles did not weaken at all, but the missiles just didn't move. On the battleship, the strange sight of missiles was magnified on the screen. Ronan widened his eyes, looking at the frozen missiles, and turned to ask his men, "What's going on?" The men hurriedly checked the data. Magnetic field. There is a strong magnetic field that binds the missiles. Strong magnetic field. How strong? Ronan waved the hammer in his hand, with a cold light flashing in his eyes. Strong enough to tear your battleship apart. Eric walked behind Ronan like an apricot garden. Behind him, the battleship was torn open with a large hole with a diameter of 2 meters, but there was no alarm on the battleship. Looking through the hole, many corpses of Kree people could be seen. Who are you? Ronan held the hammer across his chest, and his momentum rose steadily. Me. I am Magneto. Eric sneered, opened his 5 fingers, and then clenched his fists. The missiles frozen in the atmosphere exploded instantly, and the shock wave of the explosion even touched the Kree battleship. Magneto. A nobody. Ronan jumped high, swung his hammer over his head, and smashed it hard at Eric. Puff. Are you here to make fun of me? Eric shook his head and pointed at Ronan. His hammer immediately stopped in the air and could not move. Ronan's hands were still tightly holding the hammer handle. At this time, he was also pulled to a sudden stop. His legs fluttered in the air twice, as if he couldn't get down from the horizontal bar. Asshole. Ronan roared, released his hands and jumped to the ground, waving his huge fist to hit Eric. Eric did not dodge, but stretched out his left hand to block Ronan's fist. A small ball of silver light gushed out of his left hand and turned into a small shield in his hand. Ronan's fist landed on the shield, but the thunder was loud and a little small, and Eric didn't even shake it. Looking at Ronan's surprised eyes, Eric sneered, clenched his right fist, and hit him hard in the face, knocking him back. Be honest. Eric didn't waste time with him anymore. With a flick of his hand, Ronan's hammer shattered into pieces and turned into a chain that tightly wrapped around Ronan, lifting him upside down in front of Eric. Tell me, where is Carol? It was strange. Eric scanned several warships but couldn't find the source of the dazzling magnetic field like the little sun. She will return to the Kree and merge with the Supreme Wisdom. That will be her greatest honor. Ronan was caught, but he didn't show any worry. Supreme Wisdom. Humph, of course I know it. It's just a broken computer. Eric punched Ronan hard on the head and knocked him unconscious. It was said easily, but Eric's face gradually became gloomy. The Supreme Wisdom is a life computer created by the Kree people. It was created using the most powerful brains of the greatest thinkers, philosophers and scientists of the Kree Empire. It condenses the highest wisdom of the Kree people, including all science, philosophy, military, thoughts, etc. It is the supreme ruler of the Kree Empire. The most perverted thing about the Supreme Wisdom is not how strong it is now, but how strong it will be in the future. When the Kree Empire made it, it was designed to be infinitely upgraded. The way to upgrade is to continuously integrate new Kree people. Every Kree is proud to return to the Supreme Wisdom, but integrating into the Supreme Wisdom means that this person's thoughts, consciousness, memory, mind, and even soul, everything, are absorbed by the Supreme Wisdom. This person will lose his independent self and can no longer be considered an independent individual. Eric frowned and scanned the battleship again, but still couldn't find Carol's trace. Obviously, the place connected to the High Wisdom is the top priority that is protected by layers, and the magnetic field cannot sense the existence there. What a trouble. Eric called the unconscious Ronan over again, trying to control him to tell Carol's location, but just as he made a move, he suddenly turned his head and looked out the window. I saw a figure with red light all over his body, breaking out of a warship, flying a distance in space, and suddenly turning back, rushing into the warship again, knocking a huge hole in the warship. The figure went in and out 7 times, and a huge Kree warship was smashed into pieces and exploded. This prodigal woman. This prodigal woman. Eric cursed bitterly, his face almost touching the glass of the battleship. Watching Carol crash 3 battleships in succession, he felt his heart bleeding. Eric didn't care about the wealth on Earth. If he wanted, he could dig out all the gold on Earth, but now it was different. That was a Kree battleship. When he came in, he carefully tore open a 2-meter wide passage, and chose a location for a long time, and found a place with less destructive power. This prodigal woman, she crashed 3 ships in one breath. Unfortunately, the scolding was in vain. Carol had just exploded. At this time, no one could stop her. He couldn't just go out and fight with her for a few broken ships. Just a few broken ships, yes, broken ships, well, I still have one left. Eric covered his chest and comforted himself silently, but he caught a glimpse of the figure with a streak of red light coming towards him. Eric. Carol also saw him, and her figure stopped suddenly in front of the battleship window, tilted her head to look at Ronan who was hanging in the air, and did not destroy the battleship again. She turned her head to look around, found the hole in the belly of the battleship, and flew in from there. Carol. My battleship. As soon as they met, Eric roared at Carol angrily. Carol lifted the explosive state, and said in a daze, "What do you mean your warship?" Eric stretched out his finger tremblingly, pointed at the 3 warships outside that were already wreckage, and then pointed at his heart. His voice became more and more choked. Mine, mine. Carol rolled his eyes, looking defeated by him. Eric, that's the Kree warship. They are going to bomb the Earth. I have controlled it. Their missiles can't be launched. Control. How do you control it? Carol obviously didn't believe his nonsense. How to control it? Just like that. Eric suddenly stretched out his hand to the window, and Carol clearly felt the warship under his feet shook, and then began to turn direction with Eric's hand. When Eric moved his hand to the left, the warship flew away. When he moved his hand to the right, the warship flew to the right. When he pushed his hand forward, the warship flew forward. Is this your ability? Control matter. Carol remembered that when he was on Earth, he also controlled the Skrull pretending to be Maria. It's not matter, it's magnetic field. I can do the glowing look you just had. As he spoke, the magnetic field around Eric was raging, and tiny electric sparks appeared out of thin air, connecting together to form arcs, which then merged to form thick lightning. Lightning surrounded Eric, ionizing the air around him, and gathering a large amount of plasma emitting blue light on him. From a distance, Eric's head was raging with lightning, and mist was flowing under his feet, just like a thunder god walking out of a myth. Although Carol was amazed at Eric's ability, she felt helpless about his slightly childish behavior. She shook her head and turned to leave. Hey, where are you going? Seeing that she was about to leave, Eric hurriedly stopped her. Go back to the lab, Fury and the others. Carol thought Nick Fury was doomed, and her expression was a little gloomy. I rescued them, they should have arrived on Earth by now. Then let's go back to Earth, there's a score to settle. Carol immediately perked up when she heard that Nick Fury and the others were fine. Oh, you're looking for Jan Rog. I captured him, and he's unconscious in my backyard. Carol. Brother, you've done all my work, what do you want me to do? Eric looked innocent. Where else? Go back to Earth. Then let's go, but let's make it clear first, this battleship is my trophy. And Law Will's laboratory, it also belongs to me. Eric's greed made Carol frown. Eric, I'm sorry, I've decided to take the Skrulls to find a new home, I need Law Will's spaceship. I said it at the beginning, 1 planet for 1 spaceship. This is a losing deal. If you miss this opportunity, you won't be able to get it again. Eric frowned frivolously, stretched out a finger and shook it back and forth. A planet. Do you really own a planet? Carol's eyes widened. No matter how she looked at Eric, he didn't look like a rich man who owned a private planet. It's not that I own it, but I just happen to know the location of an ownerless planet. Do you want to exchange it? Ownerless planet. Carol frowned and thought for a moment. I have to see the planet first, and I need the consent of the Skrulls. Then what are you dawdling about? Go back to Earth. After saying that, Eric was about to fly out of the crack. Just after flying a few meters, he suddenly turned back and operated on the battleship console, and the battleship turned on the stealth mode. You also understand Kree. Eric smiled meaningfully. We are old rivals. Back to Earth, the two quickly found Nick Fury and his group at Maria's house. Hey, buddy, what's wrong with your eyes? Eric saw the scratches on Nick Fury's eyes and asked knowingly. It's a small matter, it will be healed in a few days. Nick Fury waved his hand, indicating that as a battle-hardened agent, this injury is nothing. Eric shook his head and said nothing. Being infected by the bacteria from the Devourer, even Wakanda's medical technology might not be able to cure it. This might be fate, and the boiled egg was destined to be a one-eyed boiled egg. Where's the energy core? In the stomach of the Devourer. Nick Fury is a typical person who forgets the pain after the wound heals. The Devourer just scratched his eyes, but he was not angry at all. When he saw the passing orange cat, he picked it up and rubbed it on his face affectionately. It was eaten by it. Eric was stunned. What should he do? He was in a hurry to use it. If you need it urgently, maybe you can consider inducing vomiting. It's on TV. Talos, who was watching TV with his children on the sofa, gave Eric a suggestion. Eric's eyes lit up, but Nick Fury was anxious. He took a step back with the orange cat in his arms, like a cat slave protecting his master. But the cat master didn't appreciate it. He struggled in Nick Fury's hands, jumped to the ground, and walked straight towards Eric. Eric looked at it vigilantly, always on guard against it extending a bunch of tentacles from its mouth. The devourer squatted in front of Eric, tilted his head and looked at him, then his throat surged and spit out a blue cube. Cosmic Cube. Space Gem. Eric didn't care about the dirt, he grabbed it, shook off the slime on it, and put it in front of his eyes to look carefully. Carol and Maria, who were chatting not far away, were also attracted by the blue light of the Cosmic Cube and wanted to see what Eric was going to do. Eric stared at the Cosmic Cube for a long time, then closed his eyes again, his supernatural powers flickered, changed hundreds of times, and then he opened his eyes and looked around with a smile. Everyone, are you interested in visiting an alien planet? The Cosmic Cube, the Space Stone, as one of the Infinity Stones, contains powerful space power. If used properly, the Space Stone can theoretically teleport the user to any place. It is actually inferior to the Hydra extracting energy from it. Many people have used the Space Stone, such as Loki, Thanos, and Red Skull Schmidt. During World War II, Captain America destroyed a large number of Hydra bases, and finally fought with Red Skull on the plane. Red Skull was defeated and picked up the Cosmic Cube with his bare hands and was teleported to an unknown place. Captain America did not know that Red Skull was teleported away. He saw Red Skull disappear with his own eyes and thought he had died, but in fact he did not, but was teleported to a distant planet, Vormir. This is also Eric's destination, the future home he prepared for the Skrulls. Eric slowly attached his powerful mental power to the Cosmic Cube through the magnetic field, and carefully identified the subtle traces on it. That is the mark left by the previous users of the Cosmic Cube, an indelible mark. After carefully understanding the difference, Eric found the one with the shortest time among countless marks. Injecting energy into the coordinates corresponding to this mark, a blue cloud appeared out of thin air in front of Eric, rolling and tumbling. Everyone else took a step back cautiously, and Carol took a step forward to block everyone. Eric waved his hand to indicate that there was no danger, and then slowly walked into the cloud. This is a strange and weird planet. It is obviously very suitable for survival, but it is deserted and there is no sign of life. The sky seems to be always covered by dark clouds, and the light of the stars makes the dark clouds flash in different colors. The broken eaves and broken walls can be seen everywhere on the ground, all of which indicate that some kind of civilization once existed on this planet. On the distant mountain, there stands a strange building, like two pillars piercing the sky. Yes, this is it. Eric did not move forward, but took a step back, returned to the cloud, and returned to Earth again. Everyone looked at him nervously. They all guessed that Eric was going to find a new home for the Skrulls. But this method was too incredible. The energy core that was still in the orange cat's stomach a second ago was played with in Eric's hands. It not only released blue clouds, but also made the distance between the two planets become one step away. How is it? Carol asked anxiously. Come with me. Eric waved his hand gently, summoned the unconscious Yong-Log, and returned to Vormir again, and Carol followed closely. Is this what you call suitable for survival? Carol looked at the scene around her, and her face became darker and darker. Let's not talk about the ecological environment. She just came here and noticed that there was a special energy here. This energy was everywhere, not only the earth, buildings, but also the air. Carol was extremely sensitive to energy. This energy made her feel very uncomfortable. It was cold, desolate, ominous, evil, full of the breath of death, without a trace of positive emotions. It was strange that she felt emotions in energy for the first time. Don't worry, these are minor problems. Eric slowly floated up and flew towards the distant mountain with Yong-Log. This place is so special because there is a treasure hidden here. As long as this treasure is taken away, the environment will naturally recover slowly. Treasure. What treasure? Carol flew up with Eric. Hearing his words, she couldn't help but look around with dazzling eyes. Hee hee, don't look, you can't see it, it's a gem. Eric chuckled and looked at Carol with a playful look. Tell me the truth, do you have a little admiration for Yang Log? Carol's breathing stagnated, and her eyes couldn't help but glance at the unconscious Yang Log, and the bits and pieces of the two people together flashed in her mind. Carol lived in Kerry for 6 years. In those 6 years, the two trained and fought together. Yang Log gave her enough care and warmth during the most helpless time when she just lost her memory. Regardless of the purpose, Yang Log cares about Carol very much, not only in training and fighting, but also in life. After 6 years of living together, it would be a lie to say that there is no emotion between them. If there is no emotion, how could she go to Yang Log to fight and vent every time she has a nightmare? Eric saw Carol's expression and knew the answer. He chuckled and increased his speed. Wait. Carol hurriedly caught up with him and flew backwards face to face with him. What do you want to do? Do you want to pick me up? Let me tell you, the moment I recovered my memory and knew that Yang Log was lying to me, I had decided that I would never fall in love with any man in this life. After that, Carol turned around and accelerated, leaving Eric with a chic back. Eric stared at her flying away in astonishment, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Is this why you became the cheerleader? The two quickly flew to the top of the mountain, and from a distance, they saw a figure floating in the air with legs crossed, his torn black robe fluttering without wind, and he looked as pretentious as he could be. Seeing the two people falling, the figure slowly took off his hood, revealing a red skull face. Red Skull. Eric put his hands behind his back and called out his name calmly. Welcome, you are. A yellow light flashed in the Red Skull's eyes. He was halfway through his words when he suddenly stopped in shock. He opened his mouth several times but couldn't say anything. Finally, the light faded and the Red Skull fell to the ground in embarrassment, pointing at Eric and trembling. You, who are you? Why can't I see your origins? Oh, you can see other people's origins. Carol walked forward in surprise, staring at the skull face and thinking for a moment, and finally realized, you are the Red Skull of Hydra. The one killed by Captain America. I have seen your wax figure in the Captain America memorial. Hearing Captain America's name, the Red Skull looked at Carol deeply and didn't respond. I am cursed to know everyone who comes here, such as you, Carol Danvers, born in Massachusetts, with 2 brothers, Stephen, Joseph Jr. So, you can't see my origins. Eric showed an inexplicable smile at the corner of his mouth. Maybe your master doesn't want you to see it. The Red Skull's pretense was interrupted, and he wisely shut his mouth, without any expression for Eric's sarcasm. Seeing him like this, Eric shook his head. It seems that the Red Skull who fought Captain America that year is dead. Haha, waiting here for decades, any emotions will be erased by time. The Red Skull spread his hands, his tone as calm as ever. But hatred won't. Eric suddenly stepped forward, stood in front of the Red Skull, and stared at his deep eye sockets. Even if only the soul is left, you are still full of hatred, aren't you? Hatred is the source of my survival. Eric snorted coldly, walked around him and went to the top of the mountain. Take me to get the gem. If you want to get the soul gem, you have to pay a huge price. We all think we're ready at first, but we're all wrong. Red Skull chattered along the way, as if he was explaining to Eric and others, or whispering to himself to complete a certain task. Eric followed him calmly, paying no attention to what he said, but Carol was curious. What's the price? That's the price. Red Skull pointed at the cliff a few steps away in front of them. Carol couldn't help but walked forward and looked down, only to see a circular pattern below. That's it. That's it. Eric also stepped forward. The soul gem needs to be sacrificed. What sacrifice? Sacrifice souls, one soul for another. Eric glanced sideways at Red Skull and stole his line. You know. Red Skull looked at him in surprise. Of course I know. Carol turned to look at Yang Rog, who was still unconscious, and raised his eyebrows. Eric, you want to sacrifice him? Of course, what do you think? Eric looked at her with a smile, waiting for her decision. Carol hesitated for a few seconds and then asked, with this gem taken away, will this planet be suitable for the Skrulls to survive? That's right. Come on then. Carol stepped forward and picked up Yang Rog, and when he reached the edge of the cliff, he was about to throw him down. This won't work. Red Skull looked at this child's play sacrifice and couldn't help but stretched out his hand to stop her. The soul gem needs to be sacrificed to the soul of the person you love. This is her true love. Eric suppressed a smile and pointed at Yang Rog. Red Skull looked at Carol, then at Yon Rog, and shook his head. It's useless to lie to me. I'm just a guide. The real measure of the sacrifice is the soul gem. Then you can cheat the soul gem. Eric shrugged and said it very easily. Not only was Red Skull shocked, but Carol was also shocked. How could a stone be deceived? How to cheat? Say a crosstalk to Shito. Or perform a skit. Carol, I need your cooperation. Eric stood behind Carol and placed his hands on her temples. How to cooperate? Carol suddenly became serious, her aura was rising steadily, and she was ready to explode at any time. Eric couldn't help but roll his eyes and patted her head, relax and dissipate the energy. I'm not asking you to fight. Carol was stunned for a moment, and with some embarrassment she dissipated the energy she had just gathered. What should we do? Try to love Yon Rog. Ah. Carol was dumbfounded. How could she love this? What? The Red Skull on the side was even more dumbfounded, almost popping his eyes out. Eric patted her again. Concentrate, let your mind go, recall the good times you had together, and tell yourself over and over again in your mind that you love him. It's impossible for you to succeed like this. Red Skull shook his head and stepped aside to continue watching the two people's performance. He had been staying in this ghost place for decades and hadn't seen anyone for decades. Finally, two people came this time. Regardless, whatever they do, he finds it interesting. Eric ignored him and pressed his palms against Carol's head. The human brain is composed of the cerebral cortex and the limbic system. The cerebral cortex is responsible for many advanced functions of the human body, including language, thinking, planning, execution, and cognition, etc., is called the rational brain. The limbic system includes numerous structures in the cerebral cortex and subcortical areas, including the hippocampus, amygdala, cingulate gyrus, hypothalamus and other areas. Because it governs emotions, motivation, memory and other functions, it is also called the emotional brain. Eric explained while slowly releasing electromagnetic pulses. What I want to do now is to stimulate your emotional brain and let them produce more hormones, so that you can have richer emotions. Don't resist. This little energy won't hurt you at all. After listening to Eric's explanation, Carol took a deep breath, exhaled it slowly, closed her eyes and let herself go, trying to recall Yon Rog's kindness to her, his meticulous care in life, and his detailed and patient care on the training ground. Teaching, gentle words of enlightenment after nightmares. She chanted silently in her heart over and over again, I love Yon Rog, I love Yon Rog, I love Yon Rog. Seeing that she had entered the state, Eric nodded secretly, mobilizing his mental power and magnetic field at the same time to observe her subtle changes. Through self-hypnosis over and over again, coupled with Eric's use of electromagnetic pulse stimulation from time to time, Carol's mouth gradually showed a sweet smile. That's it now. Eric immediately increased the output of his powers, and strange electromagnetic pulses bombarded Carol's hypothalamus and other locations from afar, causing her brain to secrete more hormones and produce more emotions. Carol's expression slowly became as pure as spring breeze, and a bright smile appeared on her face, as if a girl in love had received an engagement ring from her boyfriend. There is such an operation. Red Skull looked dumbfounded on the sidelines. He considered himself a very evil person. When he led Hydra, he often manipulated the lives of others. This was the first time he could manipulate people's emotions. See you soon, see you soon, see you soon. Let go. When the time came, Eric shouted in Carol's ear. Carol subconsciously let go, and Yon Rog suddenly fell down. It's done. Eric silently praised himself in his heart, and his hands slightly left Carol's head. Carol slightly opened her eyes, and looked around like a young girl. However, when she lowered her head slightly, Carol saw her beloved Yong Log falling, and her eyes were immediately bloodshot. No. Log. With a roar, Carol directly turned on the explosive mode, rushed down the cliff like lightning, and the huge energy impact knocked the Red Skull far away, and Eric was also knocked back a few steps. Oh, it seems a little too much. Eric was embarrassed, watching Carol jump off the cliff to save her husband, and almost covered his face. Carol's speed was a step slower after all. As soon as her hand touched the corner of Yong Log's clothes, he fell heavily to the ground, and he died without a groan. Blue blood flowed out, dyeing the ground blue. Carol knelt beside him, gently stroking his cheek, and a few tears flowed from the corners of her eyes. She wiped a streak of blood from Yang Rog and gently tapped it on her forehead. Rog, don't worry, your blood is still flowing in my body. After that, she burst into a brighter light, soared into the sky, hovered near the cliff, and looked directly at Eric. Eric. I want you to pay with your life. Carol, wake up, it's just some emotional hormones, it will decompose in 10 minutes. Eric patted his forehead and persuaded weakly. Carol didn't listen to him now, pointed his fists at Eric and fired directly. You will not live if you do evil, the ancients are not deceiving me. Eric smiled bitterly and blocked the energy cannon with a magnetic shield. Carol saw that the attack did not work, and rushed towards Eric in a flash. Eric hid aside like lightning, rolled his eyes and watched Carol rushing away. You can smash the Kree warship with one punch, only a fool would compete with you in strength. Carol's ability comes from the explosion of Law Will's light-speed engine. The huge energy was absorbed by her, giving her superpowers such as energy absorption, energy control, super physique, flight, etc. Her ability is as strong as that of the big super in DC Next Door. However, her weakness is also obvious, that is her mind. Suffering from amnesia, brainwashing, and betrayal in succession, her mind is extremely fragile and can be easily disturbed or controlled. This is one of the reasons why Eric chose her. If someone as determined as Captain America were to come, even if he was exhausted to death, it might not have any effect. Judging from the situation just now, choosing her is indeed the wisest choice. The effect is very good, but it is a bit too good and it is a mess. The frequency is 10 GHz, and the lethal strength of the electromagnetic pulse skill is, well, this is for ordinary people. Just now, when I hypnotized Carol, it has already exceeded this limit. Therefore, if you want her to recover, you must have a stronger electromagnetic pulse. Let's increase it tenfold first. A white light was born in Eric's palm, spinning and tumbling. The light became brighter and brighter, as if a bright star was held in his palm. Eric's whole body was bathed in thunder and lightning, and his eyes were full of white light. Carol stopped in the distance, turned around, tilted her head and stared at Eric, clenched her fists again, and the red light on her body became brighter. Seeing her stop, Eric pointed his finger, and the white light in his hand turned into a lightning bolt, hitting Carol's forehead, and instantly submerged her entire head in the white light. That was a super strong electromagnetic pulse compressed by him, essentially an electromagnetic wave, with a speed equivalent to the speed of light. Carol had just seen Eric's action and was hit. Success. Eric mobilized all his senses and carefully observed Carol's state. Carol's head was submerged in white light, and the red light emanating from her body was like resisting an invader. The white light was as strong as a general expanding the territory, and the red light was as long as a rock-solid Great Wall. The two confronted each other, and for a while they were evenly matched. Unfortunately, after just a few seconds, the red light saw that the opponent was so difficult, and immediately changed its strategy, no longer struggling to resist, but let go of defense, allowing the white light to invade Carol's head. The white light covering Carol's head was absorbed into Carol's body at a speed visible to the naked eye, and then nothing happened. Energy absorption, my brain. Eric slapped his forehead heavily, his face full of regret. Using energy to attack Carol was like throwing meat buns at a dog. In Carol's eyes, white and red light flashed alternately, the white light became less and less, and the red light on Carol's body became higher and higher. Eric finally got serious. It seemed that he had to use some hardcore attacks. He opened his hands and raised them slightly, and countless metal particles were immediately separated from the soil, condensed into egg-sized metal balls in the air, and rotated in front of Eric. Eric stretched out a hand and aimed at Carol. His eyes were fixed, and the flying metal balls in the air suddenly stopped, and one by one they shot towards Carol along his arm. Electromagnetic gun. And it was an endless supply of electromagnetic guns. Metal particles were constantly extracted from the ground, condensed into metal balls in the air, and quickly fired by Eric. Eric believed that even the Kree warships could not withstand such a hardcore attack for a few minutes. But such a hardcore attack was not possible against Carol. As soon as the first metal ball arrived, Carol swung her fist and smashed the metal ball into powder. Then, she turned into a meteor, kept swinging her fist, and rushed towards a series of electromagnetic cannons. A lightning-like punch collided with the electromagnetic cannons that continued like flowing water in the air. Huge energy exploded one after another, and shock waves came one after another. The metal ball was just broken by Carol, and then it immediately experienced the baptism of energy, and most of it was instantly vaporized. This won't work. Eric immediately stopped the attack, and his hands drew a circle. The metal particles immediately merged into his magnetic shield, making his shield stronger. Then, Eric slowly raised his right fist, and a silver light spread out from his fist, covering his entire fist. That was vibranium. The powerful punch was approaching quickly. Eric's magnetic shield only made her pause for a moment, consuming a little energy, and then was shattered. A cold light flashed in Eric's eyes, lightning flashed on his arms, and lightning like a star lit up on his fist, and he hit Carol fiercely. The two fists collided, and a visible shock wave instantly erupted, carrying huge energy, cutting the nearby mountain in half. The shock wave cut off the mountain and destroyed countless broken eaves and broken walls, but it still disappeared, stretching for hundreds of kilometers. At the center of the explosion, Eric and Carol stood opposite each other. Carol was not affected at all, and the red light on her body remained. Eric was not so good. He rubbed his right shoulder with his left hand, and his face was slightly pale. If you look closely, you will find that his right hand was slightly trembling. As expected of Captain Marvel, he is so powerful even though he is just an ordinary explosive. I wonder how strong he will be after he gets the binary star state. Eric's face was solemn, not only because of the pressure Carol brought him, but also because he found a very unusual phenomenon. It stands to reason that people's violent emotional fluctuations will not last too long. A few minutes to more than 10 minutes will reach the limit. After that, the brain will respond to stress, stop the production of hormones, and even actively decompose these hormones. Carol became emotionally agitated, and the culprit was Eric's electromagnetic pulse stimulation. However, Eric had stopped the stimulation long ago. It stands to reason that Carol's brain should have stopped producing hormones long ago. Why is she getting more and more angry like now? Maybe, it's not just because of me. Eric's eyes flashed with a few cold rays, and he couldn't help looking down. There, Yong Loge's body was lying quietly, miraculously not affected by the fight between the two, but that's all. The sacrifice has been completed, but the soul gem has not come out. Sure enough, the soul gem has its own consciousness, and it is affecting Carol. The soul gem is affecting Carol, which is inseparable from Carol's superpowers. The soul gem has been hidden on Vormir for many years, causing a drastic impact on the entire planet. Not only the earth and soil, but even the air is filled with the strange energy emitted by the soul gem. One of Carol's abilities is energy absorption, which will make her involuntarily absorb and transform all the energy she touches, naturally giving the soul gem an opportunity to take advantage of the situation. Coupled with her fragile mind, it is too easy to influence her. Soul gem, it's a bit troublesome. Eric looked at Carol who was confronting him, and his mouth was a little bitter. This was an unexpected situation he did not expect. Now the only way is to wake her up. Okay, since you are controlled, then I will wake you up. Eric made a prompt decision and quickly descended to the ground, knelt on one knee, and pressed his hands on the ground. The powerful magnetic field ability spread, not only across the mountains and plains, but also deep underground, penetrating the crust and mantle. Soon, Eric's ability was connected to the geomagnetic field of Vormir. Carol saw Eric's action, and turned into a meteor again, punching him. Eric raised his head, sneered, and closed his eyes. Carol was getting closer and closer to Eric, and the indestructible iron fist was about to hit him. Suddenly, a huge fist came from the side and knocked Carol hundreds of meters away. Carol hovered in the air and tilted his head to look at the giant fist. It actually stretched out from the mountain next to him. The huge fist, made of rocks and soil, opened its palm and slapped the ground after it hit Carol. The rock arm was propped up, just like a person trying to stand up, supporting it with force. Then, a person really stood up. A huge figure separated from the mountain peak. It was like a mountain giant from ancient times. It was covered with rocks and mud. It was more than 1,000 meters tall, and the diameter of a fist was more than 100 meters. The rumbling sound resounded throughout the Vormir star. One after another, mountain giants stood up from the peaks or plains, surrounding Carol in the air. In front of them, Carol was like a fly, as if she could be slapped to death at will. Eric opened his eyes and looked at the surrounded Carol. A smile appeared on his face, then he closed his eyes again and sat cross-legged. Carol looked around without any fear. Influenced by the soul gem, there was only destruction in her heart. These mountain giants are indeed very big, but can they be bigger than the Kree warships? It's just a matter of one punch. This is indeed the case. When Carol took the mountain giant as her target and punched it, the mountain giant who looked very tough was actually hit in the head by a punch and fell to the ground, turning into a pile of rubble. Then, the second one, and the third one. The mountain giants were knocked down one after another, but they did not fight back. They waved their huge fists, always coming from unexpected directions, forcing her to stop attacking and respond. At the same time, far outside the battle circle, on a low mountain, boulders were broken, the ground was torn, and countless metal particles were gathered together, constantly piled up and lengthened, forming a giant cannon barrel with a diameter of tens of meters and a length of hundreds of meters. The cannon barrel quickly took shape, the base automatically corrected, and aimed at Carol. In the cannon barrel, the metal particles quickly condensed to form a cannonball with a diameter of tens of meters, and under the action of the magnetic field, it was fired with a bang. This was the first time Eric tried such a huge electromagnetic cannon. The cannonball with a diameter of tens of meters was accelerated to more than Mach 10 by the magnetic field, making a huge roar, piercing through the bodies of several mountain giants in succession, and hitting Carol hard. This is really a cannon hitting a mosquito. Carol was not hurt, but was pushed hundreds of kilometers away by the huge cannonball. When she smashed the shell with one punch and returned to the battlefield again, the mountain giant that she had just crushed to pieces actually stood up again. Being affected by the soul gem does not mean that Carol is completely controlled. She still maintains a high degree of autonomy. This time, she did not go against those stupid big guys again, but took advantage of her speed and moved lightly between the mountain giants. Soon she came to the huge electromagnetic cannon and smashed it with one punch. Then, she pushed her speed to the extreme again, turned into a red light, and kept flying in the air, avoiding the attack of the mountain giant, and quickly looking for Eric's position. She knew very well that it was Eric who was manipulating everything. As long as Eric was defeated, everything would be over. Eric did not hide deliberately, but was blocked by the rubble left by the battle. He still closed his eyes and sat cross-legged, his forehead was full of sweat, his neck veins were throbbing, his teeth were bitten and clattered, and his expression looked very ferocious. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and howled, and the whole Vormir star seemed to shake. With the mountain giant delaying time, he finally completed the explosion that belonged to Magneto. Carol immediately found his position, sneered at the corner of her mouth, and swooped down. Eric also noticed Carol, chuckled, and slowly rose into the air. The strange thing was that with just a few very slight movements, the ground shook as if there was an earthquake. Facing Carol who was whistling, Eric slowly raised his fist, gently extended it like Tai Chi, and collided with Carol. Boom! With a loud bang, as if a nuclear bomb exploded, a huge mushroom cloud rose from the ground, and the shock wave spread for thousands of miles. Wherever it passed, everything was destroyed. The mountain giants were almost crushed in the blink of an eye. The magnetic field energy of a planet, this is not something you can contend with now. Eric stood at the center of the explosion, calmly watching Carol being blown away, and his figure flashed, and he appeared behind Carol, and punched again. Boom! With another loud bang, Carol was directly hit deep into the ground. Eric didn't let her go, swooped down, plunged into the ground, and collided with Carol, dispersing the red light she had just condensed again, and she fell into a coma completely. With Eric's last punch, the mountains and rivers on Vormir collapsed, tsunamis erupted, volcanoes erupted, and even continental plates began to shift. If it happened on a planet with life, it would definitely be a huge disaster. Eric grabbed Carol, returned to the ground, and gave her another electromagnetic pulse. He dispersed his strength, looked around, and shook his head. Borrowing the Earth's magnetism is indeed very strong, but the damage to the planet is too great. If I continue, I'm afraid that the magnetic poles of Vormir will be reversed. This trick must not be used on Earth. Carol fell into a deep coma, and a trace of yellow light began to emanate from her body, slowly condensing in front of her, and finally turned into a gem. Soul gem. No, my speed is too slow, I have to quickly save the manuscript. Eric walked around the soul stone several times without any intention of picking it up. Why don't you pick it up? The red skull appeared behind Eric like a ghost. Eric was not surprised at all by his appearance. Why should I pick it up? You've got it approved. No, it was Carol who sacrificed to it, not me. Eric glanced at the red skull meaningfully, unmoved at all. The floating figure of the red skull paused and spoke again. There is an adult who wants to see you. Your master. Eric frowned, as if he thought of something bad. He is the master of all souls. Red Skull didn't buy Eric's sarcasm. So, just because you have his support, you, a guy with only a soul left, are so pretentious. Red Skull. Is it his idea to control Carol? Eric stopped arguing with a lonely ghost and asked the next question. No, he never interferes with the operation of the universe. That is the Soul Gem's own decision. The Red Skull's answer made Eric curl his lips. He never interfered with the operation of the universe. What about the liar? Among the 5 creation gods, apart from the most special Galactus, he is the one who interferes the most. It seems that ghosts are also under his control. How can I see him? Hearing Eric's question, Red Skull stretched out his finger and pointed at the floating soul gem. Eric looked at him deeply and slowly placed his palm on the gem. The yellow light lit up, and Eric closed his eyes slightly. When he opened them again, he found that he was already in a purple space, with water just below his feet. There was a thatched house not far away, and there was a thatched house sitting inside, with a small figure. Eric slowly walked towards the figure, his expression becoming more astonished as he walked, and his pace could not help but speed up a bit. When he stood opposite that figure, his face turned completely dark. Hello, Eric. He is only a little over 1 meter tall. Seeing that Eric needs to raise his face, let his long, smooth hair fall loosely behind his head. Sir, why are you using Sky's appearance? Eric sat down and looked level with him who was wearing Sky's appearance. What, don't you like it? He flipped his long hair and chuckled. I really don't like it. Your Excellency, could you please change your appearance? You are so heartless. In this timeline, this soul has the deepest relationship with you. After saying that, Sky's face seemed to be burned and quickly turned into ashes. Eric was unmoved, he knew that it was not Sky, it was just a gesture he borrowed to show in front of him. In the end, the entire sky was reduced to ashes, and the ashes hovered in the air again, turning into the appearance of another person, Carol. How about using her face? He looked up and down at his hands, then clenched his fists hard, and a large amount of red light erupted from his body, exactly like Carol's own eruption. Lord Death, do you think it's funny? Although his tone was respectful, Eric looked at him as if he was mentally retarded. Yes, she is one of the 5 great gods of creation, the goddess of death. Perhaps, she is not the entire goddess of death, but just a clone of this universe. Before, Eric had some suspicions when he saw the Red Skull. The Red Skull was only injected with the Super Soldier Potion, which strengthened his body but never gained the ability to fly. Of course, it might be the ability he acquired after he was exiled, but Eric experienced an out-of-body experience. He recognized the rich soul aura on the Red Skull at first sight. The Red Skull only has 1 soul left, which explains why his fight with Carol didn't hurt him. At first, Eric thought it was the consciousness of the Soul Stone that controlled him, and sarcastically said that he had a master who was also talking about the Soul Stone. However, he did not expect that after the battle, the Red Skull actually directly said, he is the master of all souls. Who controls all souls in Marvel? Of course Thanos' goddess, Death. You are the only soul that escaped from my hands. The goddess of death dissipated the red light outside her body and looked directly at Eric in Carol's normal form, making Eric's expression freeze. I actually forgot about this. The goddess of death is a multiverse-level existence. The one here is probably just a clone of her in this parallel universe. In the Emperor Thanos universe, there is also a clone of the goddess of death. That clone is instigating destruction. Destroy the world. Thinking of this, Eric shuddered and asked cautiously, Lord Death, do you mean to take back my soul? No, I just came to see you, Eric. Your soul is very special. The goddess of death looked at Eric and made him feel very scared. Of course I know my soul is special. Eric rolled his eyes and almost said that he was a time traveler. You mean the time travelers? No, there are many time travelers in the entire multiverse. They have brought many interesting things to this universe. There is a big difference between you and them. Eric's pupils shrank sharply. He never expected that the goddess of death would directly say the word, traveler. The boss is different. What did they bring? A lot of new ideas, new abilities, new power systems, and some other interesting things, such as systems and so on. Eric. This is talking about Goldfinger, right? It turns out that Marvel time travelers all have this kind of benefit. Author, where is my golden finger? Where is it? Did you eat it? Author, hee hee, if you dare to say more, I will stop updating and lock you up in a small dark room. Eric, how about a deal? The voice of the goddess of death was full of temptation. What do you want to trade? My special soul. Eric immediately became alert. No, use the soul gem. The goddess of death chuckled, stretched out her hand, and a yellow gem appeared out of thin air, floating in the air. Soul gem. What do you want this thing for? Eric was puzzled. I have my own use. The soul gem stays on Vormir. How about I give you a chance to revive? Resurrection. Eric's eyes suddenly widened. The goddess of death showed a charming smile. Yes, a chance to resurrect in exchange for the soul gem to continue to stay on Vormir, how about it? Eric was skeptical and asked hurriedly, what is the price of resurrection? A perfect resurrection like Dracula. But I need Vormir to be the new home of the Skrulls. If the soul gem stays here, none of them can withstand the energy of the gem and will definitely go crazy. The soul gem will not emit energy within 10 years. Eric was immediately tempted, but he still wanted to bargain. 10 years is a bit short, how about 20 years? Deal. The code is finished, finally finished, go to sleep, good night everyone. Is the goddess of death sick? After exiting the soul gem, Eric looked a little strange. He felt that the goddess of death must be sick. He would collect his things and let others find them. He would also send someone to guard the way and wait for others to find them. Then he would jump out and say, this thing is very important to him. How about I trade it with you for something better? This is not a disease, but a serious illness. If an ordinary person did this, it would definitely be a disease, but now that the person doing this was a god, Eric couldn't help but think about it. Why did he do this? Is it because I'm handsome? Impossible. He likes the avocado type like Xiao Jian. Is it to leave the soul gem to Thanos? Does he also have true love for Thanos? It's not like that. If he really loves Thanos, he won't trick him to death. I don't know for sure. He will go after Thanos is dead. He's there. Perhaps, he simply wants to give me benefits. Just like me and the little fool, forming a good relationship. Well, this is not as reasonable as he thinks I am handsome. It's also possible that it's because my soul is special. There are so many time travelers in Marvel, and I'm just a poor guy whose golden finger was hacked by the author. What's so special about it? Author, stop talking nonsense. Work quickly, your golden finger is already on the way. There are many express delivery during Double 11, but it is a bit slow. It is almost here, so pay attention to check. Eric, when will the goods arrive? Author, I guess it will be near the end of this book. Eric. After thinking wildly, Eric felt that he must have Alexander syndrome. He couldn't help but reached out and slapped his face hard twice. The Red Skull next to him looked confused. Brother, what unclean things did you see when you went in? How do you smoke yourself? The Red Skull's state is very special. He was a person who has been dead for decades, and now only his soul exists. Because of the soul gem, he can appear from time to play the role of an NPC. If he is separated from the soul gem, he can only dissipate all the way. Moreover, because he is in the soul state, he will hardly suffer any physical damage. If he is scattered, he can be reborn in the soul gem. Eric had no way to do anything to him, and had no intention of doing anything to him. With a casual move, the cosmic cube he had hidden underground flew over. Then, he opened the cosmic cube in the eyes of Red Skull with shock and nostalgia, and brought it with him. Carol, who was in a coma, returned to Earth. The Red Skull stretched out a finger and pointed tremblingly at the place where they disappeared. That's mine, mine. Back on Earth, Eric settled Carol and found that Nick Fury had left, so he quietly flew to space. As soon as he arrived in space, he was stunned by the fiery scene in front of him. Earth-version spaceships were flying around, and the radio signals for communication were overwhelming. From the bay windows of the spaceships, astronauts could be seen shouting excitedly, and some even danced. They were all picking up trash. Carol crashed 3 Kree warships. Now, there are a lot of Kree warship wreckage floating in the outer reaches of the atmosphere. They are collecting these wreckage. They used mechanical claws to drag the smaller wrecks into the spacecraft, and install propellers on the larger wrecks to push them into the atmosphere. There are dedicated people on the Earth responsible for tracking them. They are already wrecks anyway, and it won't matter if they are broken. Looking at the Eagle standard on the spaceship, Eric's face suddenly turned blacker than coal. Shield, rob him again. That's right, it's his. He will not admit that Carol shot down those spaceships. Eric quickly found the most unique and active spacecraft in the group of spaceships, which was the Air Force transport aircraft modified by the chief scientist of Skrull himself. In the spaceship, a black man's left eye was wrapped with gauze, and his right eye was bigger than a dung beetle's dung ball. He kept picking up the communicator and barking orders, and he didn't forget to speed up and snatch the wreckage. Nick Fury. This one kills with 1,000 swords. Eric gritted his teeth with hatred, but he had no intention of going forward to argue with him. If he had that time, he might as well pick up more garbage. Clean up more space junk and contribute to the safety and sanitation of the space ecological environment. We are people of status, so we can't swallow dates like braised eggs. It would be too ugly to eat. Eric quietly disappeared, sensed through the spaceship group, pulled what he needed in front of him, and pushed the rest far away, leaving S.H.I.E.L.D. busy. His understanding of Kree technology far exceeds that of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he also has the ability to sense magnetic fields. He specializes in picking up things that he needs, or that are not available on Earth and cannot be made with Earth's technology. His efficiency is far more efficient than S.H.I.E.L.D. Bureau. He saw with his own eyes 2 S.H.I.E.L.D. astronauts risking their lives to get out of the cabin and install thrusters on a very tall-looking wreckage. He really wanted to tell the 2 astronauts that the wreckage was used on the Kree battleship to decompose undigested dietary fiber, protein, minerals, fats and other substances, commonly known as septic tank. In a few minutes, Eric went through the small area occupied by S.H.I.E.L.D. He also had too high a vision and there were not many useful things. He once again looked at the S.H.I.E.L.D. spacecraft as crazy as robbing treasures, shook his head a little bit harshly, turned around and headed further away. After dozens of trips back and forth, Eric searched everywhere he could find. His backyard was already full of debris of all sizes. If he hadn't put a magnetic shield on it, the cosmic radiation carried by it alone would have caused diseases in the surrounding plants and animals. Calculating the time, Sky was almost out of school. Eric sensed it again and felt that there should be nothing missing. He sneered at the S.H.I.E.L.D. spacecraft and flew back to Earth. These debris needed to be dealt with as soon as possible. The cosmic radiation on them was too dangerous, and it would be time-consuming and laborious to eliminate them all. He had to do the garbage sorting work. First, the intact components on them were removed, the radiation was eliminated, and they were sent to the underground laboratory for Hydra scientists to study slowly. Then there were the damaged components. Eric carefully removed a lot of precious materials that could not be found on Earth from them and kept them properly. Eric disassembled and combined the remaining metal shells or things that were useless to him, and made some things that looked high-end but were actually useless. He could sell them to Nick Fury. After having lunch with Sky, Eric came to Louisiana again. Carol had woken up, and Maria and Nick Fury were with her. Anyone could see that Nick Fury was in a very good mood, and his mouth was almost grinning to the back of his head. Fury, I didn't expect you to care so much about Carol. She just woke up from a coma, and you were so happy. It seems that you really love her. You two should be together. The random matchmaking and the creation of a couple did not happen. Nick Fury had no time to chat with him. He stayed for less than 10 minutes and left on the pretext of being busy with official business. Before leaving, he borrowed the space shuttle again. No need to guess, he must have gone to collect junk again. Eric was very disgusted with his behavior, secretly despised him, turned around and told Carol about what happened after their fight. He said what he should say and glossed over what he shouldn't say. Eric's meaning was very clear. Vormir would be peaceful in the next 20 years, without strange soul energy, without the Kree chasing, and without Galactus running to eat. The Skrulls agreed to move without even thinking about it. Their tribe was very small, only a few hundred people, and they had families with them. Half of them were old, weak, sick and disabled, and they could not withstand any tossing. In their view, as long as the family was together and there was no Kree chasing, anywhere was a harbor for the soul. As for what will happen in 20 years, let's talk about it in 20 years. Now they just want to be a turtle and live a peaceful life in a safe corner. Carol began to take on a lot of responsibilities and promised that she would help the Skrulls find a more perfect home within 20 years. The group said goodbye reluctantly. The Skrulls set foot on the land of Vormir through the cosmic cube. This time they appeared on the other side of Vormir, far away from the Soul Gem and the Red Skull. Carol took the captive Ronin and stayed on Vormir with the Skrulls. She would help the Skrulls rebuild their home, and then take Ronin back to Kree to settle the private grudges, and then wander in space to find a planet more suitable for the Skrulls to survive. Before leaving, Carol gave Eric a modified pager and asked him to pass it to Nick Fury. She originally wanted to leave it to Eric, but then she thought that Eric could knock her out when she was in her explosive state. If he couldn't solve the problem, it would be useless for her to go, so it was more appropriate to give it to Nick Fury, a weak chicken. Carol, cut your hair when you have time. Long hair is easy to get all over your face during battle. Eric and Carol waved goodbye and closed the cosmic cube. Eric had just closed the portal when Nick Fury came back to return the plane. After learning that the owner had left, he said with great regret that he would definitely protect the plane and never let it fall into the hands of bad people. Then, Nick Fury flew back to S.H.I.E.L.D. and handed the plane to Alexander. He returned to his office, turned on the computer, found a file from a hidden folder, clicked to open it, and the title was very eye-catching, Guardian Project, Phase 1. Nick Fury pulled the file to the end. On the last page, there was a list-style table with only one name on it, Eric Landshare. He filled in Carol Danvers' name on the second line and planned to close the file. After thinking about it, he pulled the file to the beginning and changed the title to Avengers Project. After dealing with the Skrulls, Eric felt happy and returned to his villa to act as an NPC. He interacted with Skye for a while before going to his underground laboratory. After thinking about it, Eric decided to vacate the underground laboratory. He wanted to build something more important here, 100 times more important than the Hydra scientists. As for the Hydra scientists, just throw them to the spaceship laboratory of Luwil. Not only will that place not be discovered, but it also has more advanced Kree technology equipment. More importantly, it is more spacious. The underground laboratory is the size of a football field. Most of the space is filled with various valuable experimental equipment. Then there are many sterile rooms and clean rooms. In fact, there is not much space for Hydra scientists to live. They have changed from luxurious single rooms in the Arctic base to small dormitories for 4 people. They have not rebelled yet, entirely because Hydra's brainwashing technology is strong enough and Hydra scientists are loyal enough. With the cosmic cube in hand, the relocation work went very quickly. In just a few days, Hydra scientists were very happy to resume their single-room life and use advanced equipment made by Kree technology. After clearing the basement, Eric began a drastic transformation. What he wants to build can be said to be very famous. Many people have heard of its name, Danger. Danger is an artificial intelligence belonging to the X-Men. It has wisdom and computing power that is not inferior to Jarvis. It has independent thinking and is a true artificial intelligence. Compared with Danger itself, its derivative product Danger Training Ground is more well-known. The Dangerous Realm Training Ground is where the X-Men will conduct virtual training in the future. It can not only simulate various environments for the X-Men to train, but also easily resist the full-strength attack of several X-Men. Originally, Eric did not plan to build Dangerous Realm so early. Now the artificial intelligence technology in the outside world is still in the laboratory stage. Only Tony Stark's Jarvis has taken shape and is still worth seeing. The others are actually more advanced computer programs. With backward technology, various equipment or even more backward. Eric knows the construction technology of Dangerous Realm, but he can't know the production process of every component. Some things may not be made even with superpowers. But now it's different. With the wreckage removed from the Kree warship, most of the parts have substitutes, which makes Eric boldly plan to build Dangerous Realm ahead of time. The problem of parts has been solved, and the energy problem is also easy to solve. The arc reactor led by Ivan Vanko has only a few technical difficulties left. I believe that it will not take long to make a finished product. Eric did not have too strict requirements for Ivan. After all, he is just a young man in his early 20s, and he is still ignorant and has not read many books. Even if he has that talent, he can't do it without a foundation. Now, Ivan has to spend more than 6 hours a day to study and make up for the basic knowledge. He heard about the grievances with the Stark family from Anton Vanko, and regarded Tony Stark as an imaginary enemy, not to defeat him in battle, but to win him in technology. Tony Stark studies the arc reactor, so he studies the arc reactor. Tony Stark studies artificial intelligence, so he also studies artificial intelligence. Eric is happy to see him like this, and he teaches him a lot of his knowledge, even the construction technology of the Dangerous Realm. There is another important reason why Eric wants to build the Dangerous Realm, that is, the Kree warship he seized. The warship is there, but no one knows how to drive it. This is very embarrassing. He can't drive it himself every time, right? It's even more impossible to start training astronauts now. This is a Kree warship. The operating system on it is all in Kree. If you want to operate it proficiently, you have to learn Kree first. It's better to let artificial intelligence do it. It's time to sleep, everyone. I can't open my eyes. Don't stay up late. Go to sleep, go to sleep. Building artificial intelligence is not a matter of a day or two. After Eric transferred all the Hydra scientists and equipment, there was not even a cable in the basement, and everything had to start from scratch. Artificial intelligence requires a strong computing foundation, which requires supercomputers as a carrier. In this era, supercomputers have just been introduced not long ago, and the computing power is still at the trillions of times per second level. For artificial intelligence, it can only be regarded as the lowest of the low end. This is the limitation of the times. Eric has no choice. No matter how talented he is or how powerful his superpowers are, he can't create a Skynet out of thin air. Using the computers on the Kree warships will not work either. Their computers are directly connected to the Supreme Wisdom. Eric can physically disconnect the connection, but if it is connected to the Earth network, no one can say what will happen. Supercomputers need to be purchased. Jennifer summarized the companies selling supercomputers around the world and reported them to Eric. He flipped through them and found the name of Stark Industries. Is there any need to choose? Stark is synonymous with quality. The missiles he built can blow himself up. He contacted Tony Stark that night. This playboy, still immersed in the gentleness, heard that Eric wanted to talk about business, and directly transferred the call to Obadiah. Obadiah was very considerate and gave a 10% discount, but even with a 10% discount, it would cost nearly $100 million, which was only the initial installation cost. In the future, the annual maintenance and upkeep costs would also be an astronomical figure. This did not include the electricity bill. Supercomputers are energy intensive. If they are running at full capacity, the electricity bills will jump by hundreds of thousands every day. This thing is really not something that ordinary people can afford. Eric didn't care about US dollars at all, and he didn't even plan to bargain. He gave as much as Obadiah said, which made Obadiah feel very proud. After talking about business, Eric suddenly remembered that he had promised General Ross a cocktail party, which was supposed to be held after Carol's matter was dealt with. Now that the matter has been perfectly resolved, it is time to fulfill it, so he simply expanded the scale. Obadiah, my friend, it's my daughter's birthday next weekend. How about we come to my place to have some fun? The gathering always has to have a name. Eric calculated that it happened to be Sky's birthday, so he had to celebrate it. Sky is an orphan, well, not an orphan. Her parents are still alive and well, but they couldn't raise her for special reasons, so she grew up in an orphanage. She doesn't even know when her birthday is. Her current birthday is actually the day she was sent to the orphanage. Hey, Eric, it's your daughter's birthday, but you don't plan to invite me. Stark's voice suddenly came from the other end of the phone. Tony. You installed a bug for me again. Obaday's angry roar came immediately. Oh, Uncle Obaday, I just want to know what those two models did with you last time. I heard that they like to eat carrots. Eric, I'll call you later. There was a busy tone on the phone, and Eric looked weird. These two uncles and nephews are the same. Shaking his head, he picked up the phone again to invite others. The first birthday of his daughter after changing her surname to Lanxel, he couldn't be careless. Sky's birthday was approaching, and Eric quietly arranged everything to give Sky a surprise. Sky didn't know about this. For her, birthday was just a special day. In the orphanage, no one would take the initiative to mention the word birthday because they didn't know when their birthday was. That day, Sky got out of school as usual, got in the car of the full-time driver Barton, and chatted all the way back to the villa. The nanny told her that Eric had left and would be out for a few days. Sky was not surprised by this. She had long been accustomed to Eric's elusiveness. However, she was still a little awkward about Eric going out on her birthday. When she walked into the living room, it was suddenly pitch black in front of her. She didn't scream like an ordinary little girl, but relied on her familiarity with the villa to quickly hide in the corner and take a defensive posture. Surprise! The living room was bright again, and dozens of candles were lit at the same time, and the candlelight flickered, which was magnificent. But the people holding the candles were dumbfounded. Today's little protagonist was not at the door. They looked around and couldn't find him for a while. Eric covered his eyes directly, his expression was very embarrassed, and he watched Sky stand up from the corner through his fingers. His eyes couldn't help but glance at Patton, and his murderous eyes seemed to tell him, "You taught me so well." Feeling the boss's gaze, Patton shrank his neck and carefully hid behind Obadi, using his huge body to block Eric's gaze. Sky, happy birthday. Everyone finally found today's protagonist, and they all sent blessings and gifts. Those who can be invited by Eric are either in high positions or rich enough to rival a country. None of them are simple people. The gifts they sent are of very high gold content. Obaday gave Sky a children's version of Lamborghini, which was said to be specially customized. It has the same structure as the normal version, but is proportionally reduced. The cost is 10 times higher than the normal version, and there are only a few of them in the world. Tony Stark heard from somewhere that Sky likes teddy bears, so he customized a 10-meter tall teddy bear for her. Not only Sky, but also Eric was dumbfounded. This thing can't even get through the door. General Ross was the most economical, and gave Sky a diamond necklace. Boiled Egg was the most stingy, so he brought a box of chocolates. Sky looked at the big men who she could only see on TV and in newspapers enthusiastically giving her gifts, and it took her a long time to react. She secretly looked at Eric, and saw that he was looking at her with a smile. She turned her head away quickly, but her eyes were a little red. Eric hurried over and hugged her. Sky, today is your birthday, you won't be beautiful if you cry. I didn't cry. Sky pursed her lips hard, wiped the corners of her eyes quietly, and whispered in Eric's ear, "Thank you, Eric." Eric couldn't help but narrow his eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled up. This wave was worth it. Hey, Eric, we are the only ones who gave gifts. What gift did you prepare for the little princess? Stark came over with a wine glass and put his arm on Eric's shoulder. Eric looked up and down, and asked with a smile, "Stark, are you wearing insoles?" Stark's movements were stiff for a moment, and then he immediately returned to normal, shrugging and saying, "I just grew a little bit." Casting a look of contempt at Stark, Eric carried Sky to the center of the living room. Thank you all for coming to my daughter's birthday party. Just now Stark asked me what birthday gift I prepared for Sky. So, here, I will officially announce it. Eric's words attracted everyone's attention, and they were keenly aware that what Eric was about to announce was probably not simple. Alice Industries, starting today, will officially change its name to Sky Industries. Eric looked around and smiled as he said his birthday gift to Sky. On the day Sky turns 18, she will become the new president of Sky Industries. Everyone's expressions changed, even Stark's eyes widened. Sky looked around blankly, and then looked at the smiling Eric, a little confused about the situation. Eric, why did you make such a decision? What happened? Nick Fury's face was solemn, and his originally dark face became darker and brighter. No wonder he thinks too much. Eric's decision is too much like Tuogu. In Nick Fury's view, Eric's strength is at the top of the Earth's pyramid, but now he has made a decision similar to making a will. He must have discovered some dangerous situation, and it is so dangerous that even he not sure. Don't be nervous, it's nothing. I just thought of it suddenly, so I'll say it first so that I don't forget it later. Eric smiled nonchalantly and took out a cute teddy bear-shaped necklace from his pocket and gave it to Sky. Put it around his neck. Happy birthday, Sky. Sky, hello, I'm Betty. At the beginning of the banquet, a little girl ran over to say hello to Sky. She was General Ross's daughter. She was a few years older than Sky. She was dressed in jeans and looked very capable. Hello, my name is Sky. Let's go cut the cake. Okay. Watching the two little girls running away hand in hand, Stark walked over again and said, "Man, how does it feel to have a daughter?" Excellent. Eric smiled, picked up the wine glass, and took a sip. Oh, hell, why do I suddenly want a daughter too? Stark clicked his tongue, his tone even a little envious. Eric couldn't help but widen his eyes and looked him up and down. Are you sure you are Stark? Not an alien pretending to be someone else. You must have been poisoned. TCH. When I have enough fun, I will give birth to a daughter. She will definitely be prettier than your daughter. I have already thought of a name, and it will be called Morgan. Stark touched his chin and fell into reverie. Then you can take out your inner penis. Eric changed the subject, causing Stark to almost fall. He gave Eric a middle finger and left angrily. As soon as Stark left, Nick Fury came over. He gave Eric a wink and signaled to go outside to talk. Eric, what happened? Why did you make such a decision? Nick Fury was still cautious. Before speaking, he took out a gadget to interfere with the electromagnetic waves, making Eric roll his eyes. It's no big deal, just take precautions before they happen. Eric looked at the sky and sighed with emotion. Fury, before Carol fell, did you ever think about aliens visiting the Earth? After thinking about it, we made a lot of action plans for this, but when it actually happened, we discovered that those plans were just pieces of waste paper. Nick Fury took a sip with some depression. Liquor. Oh. It seems you have a lot of waste paper there. Nick Fury gestured exaggeratedly. That's right, the waste paper about you is 1 meter thick. Only 1 meter. I thought I had to spare the Earth a circle anyway. Eric smiled disdainfully, and the two suddenly stopped talking, and the atmosphere was a bit solemn. Are you really okay? After a while, Nick Fury asked again carefully. Eric shook his head and replied firmly, it's okay. As long as it's okay, when will the universe Rubik's Cube be returned to me? What do you mean return it? Eric stared at his one eye with wide eyes. That's my trophy. That's the trophy of the element-devouring beast. Nick Fury didn't give in at all. His one eye was extremely round and wide. Well, there's no need to dish it out, it's all wet. The Yuan-devouring beast was given to me. Moreover, the Yuan-devouring beast does not belong to your Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau. Eric also started to stare. He did not believe that he could not stare at Lu Dan with 2 eyes. 3 eyes stared there, and countless electric sparks seemed to be generated in the middle. Nick Fury still refused to give in. But the Cosmic Cube belongs to our Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency. I checked the information and found that this thing was Captain America from 9 Watt was taken from the hands of the head snake belongs to us. Shit, the United States originally belonged to the Indians. He had already eaten something in his mouth and wanted Eric to spit it out again. Not to mention the door, there wasn't even a window. Nick Fury stared at Eric for a long time, which made Eric's eyes dry. He couldn't hold on anymore, and then he shook his head and sighed. Okay, I'll leave the Cosmic Cube with you for the time being. But I hope you can lend it to us when we need it. No, I won't borrow it. Eric directly pushed back Nick Fury's words, and said before he glared again, it's impossible to borrow, not in this life. But renting can be considered. Consider. What kind of rental law? $1 million a day. Why don't you go and grab it? Nick Fury almost yelled. How can you rob money so fast? Eric laughed and held up a finger. 1 million a day, now we are opening for a big sale. Rent for 10 days and get 1 day free, will you rent? Nick Fury gritted his teeth and said, rent. But you have to tell me, what is that thing that made the living room suddenly dark just now? Nick Fury's question made Eric's eyes light up. What is that thing? Isn't it the ultraviolet shielding device that killed vampires all over the world? This thing was originally a trap he set for Alexander, but he didn't expect to lead out Alexander, but led out a group of vampires, so Eric had to recall it. Now it seems that there will be no breakthrough from Alexander, but maybe there will be a breakthrough from Nick Fury. Calculating the time, this mean guy should be promoted to director soon. Eric smiled and explained the principle of the ultraviolet shielding device to the future director for a long time, regardless of whether he understood it or not. Anyway, he explained it in a high-sounding way, making Nick Fury more and more confused the more he listened. Stop. I'm just asking you, is this technology for sale? We are willing to pay a high price for it. Unfortunately, it's not for sale. Eric smiled charmingly. Why do I feel that writing about daily life is much more difficult than writing about battle scenes? I do have a violent tendency. The next day, all major media outlets reported on the name change of Alice Industries and the appointment of successors. People speculated why this young president was in such a hurry to make a will. Did he have a minor illness? SARS, AIDS or cancer? With the construction of 2 maglev train lines, the funds allocated by the White House have been gradually transferred to Alice Industries, to the accounts of Sky Industries. With sufficient funds, other departments of Sky Industries have also flourished. First is the New Materials Department. After Eric released the world's first room temperature superconducting material, Lancier No. 1, the New Materials Department developed several new materials under Eric's guidance. Although none of them were as shocking as Lancier No. 1, each of them brought huge innovation and impact to the traditional materials industry. Today, Sky Industries has become a leading company in the field of new materials science. As long as Sky Industries releases new materials, they will inevitably be snapped up. Of course, no material can take away the limelight of Lancier No. 1. Lancier No. 1 has always been the most important pillar industry of Sky Industries. Even if the price keeps rising, orders are still coming in an endless stream. The second is the weapons department. With sonic weapons as a stepping stone, General Ross's help, and the successful development of the electromagnetic gun series of weapons is just around the corner, the military is very optimistic about Sky Industries. Many military leaders hope that Sky Industries can become stronger to balance the situation of Stark Industries' dominance. Then, there is the medical department. After Sky Industries and Stark Industries released metal prostheses, Sky Industries released a new medical achievement, that is, the Cradle of Life. Of course, it is only a low-profile version of the Cradle of Life, and the price is extremely high, but it has become a Cradle of Life extension in the eyes of many wealthy people, and orders have never shown a downward trend. Finally, the Bioengineering Department, the Genetic Engineering Department, and the newly established Aerospace Department have successively published research results and occupied a place in major scientific research magazines. Although there have been no shocking inventions, no one will underestimate their future. Sky Industries is no longer a nobody. However, on this smooth road, Eric suddenly made a decision that was almost like making a will. It seemed that he was going to retreat at the height of his career. This not only caused a lot of discussion outside, but also caused unrest within Sky Industries. Sky Industries' stock fell by several percentage points overnight, and its market value evaporated by billions of dollars. Eric did not comment on these. He made this decision on impulse. He said it casually. He did not think too much at the time, but thinking about it afterwards, there was nothing wrong with doing so. There are too many dangers in the Marvel Universe. Eric does not know what kind of dangers he will encounter in the future, nor does he know when he will go too far. Just like on Vormir, Carol was affected by the Soul Gem, which was beyond his expectation. Thinking about it now, Eric is afraid. What if it was not the Soul Gem that affected Carol at that time, but the Cosmic Cube? What if it was the heart of the universe? I'm afraid he would have died long ago. The Marvel Universe is very dangerous, and it is even more dangerous if you go too far. So he suddenly felt that he had to leave a way out for his daughter, so that she would not be bullied when he really got into trouble. For a period of time after Sky's birthday party, Nick Fury came to Eric almost every few days, either to rent the Cosmic Cube or to buy the technology of the UV shielding device. SHIELD also found related equipment for stealth technology on the wreckage of the Kree warship, but those wreckages were too broken, and the larger ones were taken away by Eric or pushed into the depths of the universe. They could only pick treasures from a pile of rubbish, and they also had to face the technical barriers of Earth technology and Kree technology. It was almost an impossible task to develop a stealth device with these. Nick Fury was about to take over the position of director, and Alexander had appropriately delegated power, allowing him to access a lot of secrets, and also let him undertake a lot of projects, such as the Insight Project. With Eric, the Red Skull Guards, by his side, Alexander always felt uneasy and wanted to get rid of him, but found that he had no strength at all, so he could only endure it again. But it was not a solution to always endure like this. Alexander simply handed over all the Insight Project to Nick Fury to handle, and he began to gradually move behind the scenes. The enemy is dark, I am bright. The enemy is bright, I am dark. Alexander has also read the military works of the flower-growing family. He thinks that throwing Nick Fury, a pure-blooded shield, out to block him is the best way to deal with it. You want to seize power? Sure. Go and flatten shield first. What? Want to catch the thief first? Go directly to me. Sorry, I don't have power anymore, all of it is with Nick Fury, go find him. Although Nick Fury's mind is like honeycomb coal, he still trusts his leader very much. He regards Alexander's appointment as the last test for him and devotes himself to the construction of projects such as the Insight Project. After he finished reading the report of the Insight Project, he realized an important flaw in the plan. The flying aircraft carrier is too big. That's right, it's too big. There are planes on it. How can it not be big? Such a big guy flying in the sky, everyone can see it. Think about it, ordinary people can see planes flying by just by looking up, so if such a large aircraft carrier flies into the sky, wouldn't it be a huge mess? Ordinary people can get away with it by making up a reason, but what about those evil forces with ulterior motives? There are many villains with black technology on the blacklist of SHIELD. What if they covet their flying aircraft carrier and come to steal it? Therefore, the flying aircraft carrier must be invisible. But after checking, it seems that the only technology on Earth that can do this is the ultraviolet shielding device of Sky Industries. Eric is an old acquaintance. Nick Fury vowed to Alexander that he would complete this difficult task, and then he ran into a wall with Eric. After repeated grinding several times, Eric meant the same thing. The ultraviolet shielding device can be sold to you, want the technology? Dream on. After hitting a snag with Eric, Nick Fury gave Alexander another suggestion. Since Eric was unwilling to give the technology to outsiders, he should make him his own and recruit him into SHIELD. Alexander almost jumped up. He was still guarding against him, but you actually wanted to let him in directly. No way. With a serious deception of power being taken away, Alexander instantly listed dozens of suspicious aspects of Eric to Nick Fury, saying that such a person must not be allowed into SHIELD. Nick Fury has his own judgment. He and Eric have lived and died together several times, and he knows Eric very well. Although this person is a bit of a fool, he is still a good person. Since you don't let him in now, I will wait for 2 years. After 2 years, I will have the final say. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and support our channel.